his head with the missing link. He's skinny as a snake and fast as a mink, but he ain't for sale unless you at the kitchen sink. Well, look out, here he comes again. Look out, they say he's dead, he's my free best friend. Look out, he's so honest and the dishonest red, meeting up with the replaceable head.
Hey gals and guys, this is Michael Ferrari of Cinema to Meep. Welcome to episode 54 of the Retro Movie Love Podcast. And with me today is my good pal, Daniel Archer. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going over there in Nice?
Good. Wow, episode 54, really? Congratulations.
It's 54. I think it's time to get to the disco.
I think you're right.
I got my disco suit on.
Cool.
How's it going over there in Nice?
Yeah, Nice is good. Once again, it seems like every time I come on and do a podcast with you, I've had some major life-altering thing happen. I just landed a new job, which I'm super stoked about. I took a few years off from teaching, and now I'm going to go back into teaching, so that's really exciting. Yeah, thrilled about it.
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot.
Shall I call you Professor Archer from now on?
You can call me Professor Archer. Yes, you can.
My theory is that since we talked about teen movies so much in this podcast together, we conjured it up, and now you'll be teaching teenagers in a school setting. So.
Oh my God! I wonder if they're going to be all angsty like some of the kids we've talked about.
Hopefully, it doesn't turn into Class of 1984 for you.
I know, or Fire Walk with Me. That would be a nightmare.
I mean, it would be interesting, but yeah, a bit of a nightmare to live through.
Yeah, I don't think I can handle a Laura Palmer in my classroom. But
Oh God! So today we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about independent cinema from the 1980s.
Yes, the 80s indie films that I think really kind of became something new and fresh in that decade. We were getting a lot of good studio films, like big films were getting bigger. Big studios like Paramount and Universal, just making these big kind of tentpole films. But these little films started reappearing out of nowhere in the 80s, and mostly landing on the video store shelves. And I know I was kind of surprised by a lot of them. How did they first come to you? Like, how did you start noticing these films?
Well, I mean, I guess like you, I worked at a Blockbuster Video, which had a surprisingly well-stocked selection because I was able to see, I remember, renting Cassavetes and Almodovar and, all of these different, auteur directors. So I guess that was sort of my first exposure to the era in independent film. And then, I don't know, by the time like Sex, Lies, and Videotape came out in 89, I was in high school. And by that point, I was already going to the cinemas to start to see, movies other than Back to the Future, and so I was sort of watching a lot of these movies when they started to come out. But I don't know, the thing is now, I love the independent films that came out in the 90s. So I guess in my mind, when I think about independent cinema, I always think about that great era that I guess kind of started with Sex, Lies, and Videotape and then ended somewhere around, I don't know, Shakespeare in Love.
That put it to bed for sure, yeah.
Can we say that was the nail in the coffin?
That was the nail in the coffin, yes.
Yeah. So
you can say that the Weinsteins kind of started it and ended it in a way.
I think they did, yeah. So I tend to think about those movies, and I now I tend to kind of overlook all of the great stuff that came out in the 80s. So it was really interesting to go back and watch these movies that we have on our lists.
It's funny because I when I talk about these movies from the 80s, I usually talk about my theatrical experiences with them. But looking at them, there's only maybe like of the 10 films that I have on my list, I think only 2 of them I saw in theaters, which is very unusual for me, at least. On this podcast. So I think, a lot of these were discoveries at the video store and seeing these movies, not really knowing that they were independent films, like, because a lot of them were marketed as like just like a movie that's like another movie. They made them kind of seem like something else. And
That's right.
so you're thinking, oh, okay, you're getting another like Blood Simple with one of my picks, or like another teen thriller or whatever it was, or a sex exploitation film. But really they were like these films that were financed by little companies or fledgling companies, or some one of my picks self-financed. So it's interesting with the kinds of little films that were just popping up from different sources. And
Yeah.
the 80s had all these kinds of little studios that were trying to compete. I mean, just compete with the big boys in a way, but not quite getting to that point. Like Orion, for example, was one of those companies that was really trying to step up and compete on a bigger level. But that kind of blew up for them. But there's other little companies that were just putting out these films because there was a need for them at the video store. There were, much like there is now a need for quote unquote content. I mean,
I hate that word.
I hate
content.
it too. I just like, yeah, and I hear about it more and more these days. Everyone uses these buzzwords when talking about films and TV and media, and it drives me crazy. But back then,
it's so gross.
Yeah, but back then they had a similar thing where they had to fill a need, and that was for the video stores. And these video stores needed films and just needed more titles, and so these little companies were popping up and making these films mostly for the video store market, and they knew there was a market for them. They were getting sold that way for the most part, even though a lot of them had small theatricals and say New York or LA or some regional releases. And I just love discovery. It's more the hunt and the discovery of these little films. And of course, that became a bigger thing in the 90s and kind of morphed into something else. And suddenly you had studios buying small little properties and or small little companies who's acquiring all these titles for their just catalog. So it became another thing, but there's a purity there with a lot of these films.
Yeah.
There were definitely filmmakers who were just trying to express themselves with very little money, and it's what is great about film, the surprise of what films can do in different ways. And
yeah, I mean, I love the era. I love 80s studio pictures. I mean, that was such an amazing era, and I kind of think it was one of the best. But it's really, I agree with you. It was really exciting back then to go back and discover at the video store or whatever these smaller films, which were really idiosyncratic, and they were more character driven. And they certainly didn't rely on special effects. It was all story or mood or something else that just sort of sucked you into the movie. And it was great. It was great. I guess, the other thing I was thinking, I guess a lot of those independent studios, I mean, I guess they sort of broke in by making horror movies, right?
Right.
Like New Line and Nightmare on Elm Street, and even the Weinstein brothers with The Burning. But I'd say I didn't choose any horror movies for my list. I went except for one. I do have one horror movie. But for the most part, I kind of stayed away from horror when I was thinking about 80s independent cinema for this podcast.
Yeah, I mostly stayed away too because I've talked about a lot of them already, or I could just I'm saving them for another podcast or a horror centric podcast. So, and I know a lot of people out there who listen to the show like a lot of horror films. So I think they could be their own thing too. So So let's talk about our recently seen before we get into like our lists, our honorable mentions, and all the titles we left off and stuff. What have you watched recently?
Well, it's you asked me how are things in Nice. It's actually a pretty exciting time because the Cannes Festival is happening right now, and so for the first time in my life, Cannes is just like 30 minutes from here by train. So the other night we hopped on the train. We went to the Cannes Film Festival, and it was amazing. I mean, I grew up watching it on TV, and it was, of course, you're removed. You have to stand behind barriers and police and things like that. So it's not like you get too far or too close to the Croisette, the red carpet where everybody goes up to the pavilion. But it was just the atmosphere in Cannes right now is incredible. Everybody's walking around in tuxedos and like, evening dresses. Can you imagine like wearing a tuxedo to go see a movie? It's so crazy. I could barely get out of my pajamas. We did, and we went with a British friend of mine who kept pointing out British TV stars wandering around, and they were like on shows like Doctor Who. Like I've never seen Doctor Who, so I don't know who these people are. But apparently, we were in the midst of different celebrities, and so anyway, that was really cool. And my point being that because the Cannes Festival is happening right now, they just in France and some local markets, they're starting to release some of the films that are currently playing. So one of the movies that I saw recently was the opening night movie, which is the new Jim Jarmusch movie. It's a zombie comedy called The Dead Don't Die. Mm-hmm. And I think it's coming to the U.S. in June or July. It's a summer release. And I don't know, Michael. I have to say, we're talking about independent cinema, so I probably shouldn't admit this, but I just can't get into Jim Jarmusch. I don't know what it is. He's very low key, but almost the point of kind of boring me. I don't know. There's not too many. I'm sure I've seen one or two of his films that I've appreciated, but I never love a Jim Jarmusch movie. Right. And that was certainly the case with this one. I kind of felt like a lot of the zombie tropes that he plays up for satire it's been done before, and I didn't really feel like he added very much to the genre that was too interesting. He had great opportunities to maybe use the zombie as a way to reflect current Trump America, and he does do that a little bit with this movie, but I felt like he didn't really push it far enough. So I was disappointed with this movie. That said, there are some moments that I like. Tilda Swinton is great. I liked Adam Driver a lot, Chloe Sevigny. There's a lot of really great actors doing fun stuff in the movie, but anyway, so that was my take on that. The other Cannes release, which I just saw last night, is the new Almodovar, Pain and Glory, and I loved it. That movie is great. And I think that's coming to the U.S. in October. But it's sort of autobiographical. It's Almodovar looking back on his life and sort of telling his story through Antonio Banderas, who is back in form. He's great in this movie. If you're, anybody who's an Almodovar fan will probably love it. It's great. So those are the only two Cannes films that I've seen so far. Next week we're seeing Rocket Man, the Elton John biopic, which also just played. So I saw those. I saw John Wick, which I was frustrated by. I loved the first two John Wicks, but I gotta be honest with you. I'm kind of tired of these movies that are just setups for movies to come. And I want a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right. I don't want to leave on a cliffhanger. I want some resolution. And it's super stylish, and Keanu Reeves looks great, and he's a lot of fun to watch, but just the story was, I don't know. Give me an ending. So there's that. I saw my favorite movie of the year, which is Gloria Bell.
Oh yeah, I've been wanting to see that one. Yeah,
I love this movie. I mean, talk about independent. It has a real independent spirit to it. It's character driven. It's idiosyncratic. It's a remake of a Spanish language film by the same director who made that film actually a few years ago. And basically, it's just Julianne Moore plays this middle-aged woman who's trying to get through life, day-to-day stuff, and she meets John Turturro, this kind of jerk love interest who dumps her, and then she has to kind of get over the heartbreak. And the movie is just about her sort of coming to terms with being a middle-aged woman. And honestly, in this day and age of Marvel, it seems so radical to me that there's this quiet little movie about being a middle-aged woman. I loved it. So I saw Pet Sematary, which was okay. I prefer the original. I don't know. This seemed a little unnecessary to me. There were some elements to the ending of this that I liked, but not enough to make me reevaluate my opinion of the one that came out in the 80s. And then finally, I just rewatched If Beale Street Could Talk, which was my favorite movie from last year. And I think that's a really beautiful movie. And have you seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
Did you see it? No? Oh,
No.
It's great. I've seen it twice now, and both times I loved. I'm forgetting the director's name. Jenkins.
Barry Jenkins, maybe?
Yeah, Barry Jenkins, yeah. I also loved his other movie, Moonlight. I think he's really talented, and I'm super excited to see what he does. So yeah, that's my... Oh, and Us. I saw Us. And I liked Us. I thought Us was pretty cool.
Yeah, I liked Us, but I was maybe my expectations were a little too high for it. Me too, if I'm honest. Yeah.
So
I didn't walk away from it feeling like I did with Get Out. Yeah. But it's definitely something I'm going to revisit when it comes out on Blu-ray, and maybe I'll pick up more on some of the nuances. I did pick up on some of the references while watching it, but and I always appreciate a good Lost Boys reference, and that one had at least two of them in it, so which is good.
I thought about you when I watched it.
But I revisited Chud after I watched that, and I could definitely confirm my lifelong disdain of Chud is still living. I do not like Chud.
I haven't seen Chud since like 1987. I don't know, but
yeah, it doesn't work for me, that movie. It's like a New York movie where you barely see New York, and it's people in rooms talking, and questionable creature effects once in a while, and I think it's boring. I just don't like it.
yeah. I think I remember being bored by it too, but I'm still gonna rewatch this.
And it's all like homeless people. Homeless means like lots of dirt on your face in that movie.
Of course,
it's right. I was so distracted by all the bad makeup applied to all the homeless people. I was like, oh god.
Yeah, that's how we saw homeless people in the 80s. They were just dirty.
Just dirt. Like literal dirt smashed on the face.
Sensitive.
For me, I've been watching lots of things. I'll go over them quickly. I watched Fair Game with Sidney Crawford and William Baldwin.
Oh, yeah.
And that was amazing in its own terrible way. So I had fun watching that. Reversal of Fortune. Revisited that. Of course, still solid. I really like it. I bought The Children on Blu-ray, and The Children is an amazing film. It really is unique, and a good regional film. It was shot in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, and in some parts of it in New Jersey too. But it's a lot of fun to watch, and the Blu-ray looks great. From Vinegar Syndrome. I rewatched... I bought the VHS tape of The Experts, starring John Travolta and R.A. Gross and Kelly Preston and Deborah Foreman are in it. And I gotta say, The Experts is... I think there are people who hate this movie, but I think it's pretty fun. And it's turning...
Well, I never saw it, but speaking of working at Blockbuster Video, I remember we had 2 shelves of The Experts, and nobody ever rented The Experts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a popular rental.
This is during John Travolta's downturn or whatever. Yeah. Although he made Look Who's Talking not long after that, and that was a big hit. But yeah, I think people just don't like it. I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. I think the dance sequences are great. There's a one with Kelly Preston that really it needs to be seen to be believed. There's a clip of it on YouTube. I urge you all to check it out. It'll make you want to watch the movie. I like those kinds of fish out of water stories, and this is one of them. And it's like two guys who dream of having a nightclub, and you put them in a small town, and there's some twists and turns with that, and they're supposed to teach these people American culture, and it's a lot of fun. And I think Travolta's actually kind of funny in it, and he has a glorious mullet in it too. So
yes, yeah.
So watch The Experts. It's the 30th anniversary. I want screenings of it, please. Deadly Illusion, I got that on VHS. That's a Larry Cohen picture. Rest in peace, Larry Cohen. I love you. The Invisible Kid on VHS. That was fun to watch. Karen Black is crazy. We love her. The Zoo Gang was a movie that I had never seen before. It's one of those ones on the video store shelves in the 80s that I always meant to pick up and rent. It was a New World tape. I loved it.
I'm looking. I don't know this. I've never seen it. I'm looking it up right now.
It's a teen film. It's one of those they have to save something movies.
Yeah.
And in this case, they have to save the nightclub that they open up. These teenagers open up a nightclub, and for teenagers, and they have to save it. And it's a lot of fun. It really is. It has
Tiffany Helm.
Tiffany Helm from Friday 5. It has
Yes.
She's a major character in it, and it has Iron Eagles guy Jason Gedrick. They're the leads and possible love interests. It has Ben Vereen playing a crazy homeless man who teaches them wrestling.
Is he dirty?
He's dirty because he's homeless, but he teaches them wrestling, and it has to be seen. Another one, it has to be seen to be believed. It's amazing.
I definitely have to check this movie out. The screenshots are amazing.
It's got great hair. It's got great music and dancing. It's got everything that I want in a New World 80s movie, and I'm surprised I didn't check this out during the time, because I feel like I would have watched it a lot over the years. Yeah. So there was a potential of me spending many hours watching this movie, but I've only seen it once now, and I need to rewatch that videotape that I bought, and hopefully it gets a DVD Blu-ray, because I think it needs to. It's one of those fun discovery movies. I bought on Blu-ray Stay Tuned with John Ritter and Pam Dauber, and I sort of liked it when it came out. But I think it's kind of aged well. It's a satire about television and our consumption of television.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was kind of ahead of its time. Certainly, TV is more like that now than it was even then. And we could spend many of our our hours watching it, and this one pits them where they're actually put inside of these television programs, and it's a fun movie, and I enjoyed it. Cross Creek I watched with Mary Steenburgen.
Love it.
Really loved it.
Yeah.
I'm glad I bought the DVD for that one. It looks good, and she's great in it, and she really deserved her Oscar nomination. Did she win? I'm not sure, but she was definitely nominated. It's full of atmosphere. It's full of a certain kind of mood and feeling, and it really does a great job at that. And she's great to watch in it. And Peter Coyote's the love interest in that one. And there's a lot of great supporting turns, like by Rip Torn and people like that. So There's Nothing Out There. I bought that on Blu-ray. It's a fun kind of 90s kind of spoof, satire spoof of horror and slasher movies. Warning Sign, that came out on Blu-ray. I bought that. I watched Pet Sematary, the remake.
The remake?
Yes. And I have
Do you like it?
I have to say, you know how I'm really hard on remakes, and for the most part, I do not like 98% of them. 99. Yeah. It's a really high number. I just don't like most of them. I think they're kind of pointless and don't do much for me. But I did like this one for some reason. It has some issues. It's a couple of things that they could have easily. Hi, doggy.
So, she doesn't like hearing you talk about Pet Sematary.
Oh, I see. I swear. You're not going there. It has some things that could have been probably ironed out or just like finely tuned. But I don't know. I liked it. I liked that it was a bit more serious. I liked how dark it got, how obsessed with death the movie is in every scene. Yeah. How people fear it, or just are kind of just kind of tempted by it, and how they try to deal with the loss, and how they try to where it goes with that. Everyone knows the story of Pet Sematary, but the movie it takes some different twists and turns from the original source material and the other previous adaptation, and I don't know, I liked it, and
yeah, I'm with you. I like the
into
twists and turns as well, and you're so right. It's really drenched in like death, and it's in some ways darker. I think what distracted me was like all of the CGI stuff, which I thought I wish that I didn't need all that. I mean, I liked that the original movie focused more on the psychology of the characters, and this one does too, but the CGI just kind of distracts for me.
Yeah, I think it does. In some aspects it does, but I don't know if I don't know. I just kind of feel like I just got into its mood and darkness.
Yeah, yeah. I love the set piece that they created for the Pet Cemetery itself. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has an interesting look and feel to it, and I like that the actors were a bit more less Hollywoody. They were just felt like kind of real people. I think that was the vibe that they were going for with that. I like Pet Sematary from 1989. I think it's a good film, but I find some of it a little bit overwrought. And I like that they changed some of that. Like took out the scene where he's fighting with her family and the coffin gets knocked over. I always found that way too much. In the original. So they kind of took some of that out, but they also took some of the dark humor with the character of the runner who dies and starts talking to him, and that there's a lot of humor with that character. They took that out, and again, in every scene there's death. Death is like spoken about. There's lots of it, and I kind of appreciate that. So it appeals to my maybe gothic side.
Yeah. And there is a saving grace at the end of this movie. They do play a remake of the Ramones song, but thank God they haven't slowed it down in that way that every remake song is now slowed down.
Yes,
for the millennial ear.
I was fully prepared to that to play that slow down version. And it didn't actually. It was actually a fairly fun remake of that song, and an interesting angle with the girl band. So I liked it.
Yeah.
Okay, I went for Dead Bang with the John Frankenheimer film with Don Johnson, a movie that I liked when it came out, but kind of forgot about. I picked it up on DVD, and actually I think it's a lot of fun. It's a bit of underrated actioner. With Don Johnson playing this guy who's like a lot of these cop characters in 80s movies, who's kind of down on his luck, and he's kind of very quick to be on the edge. Not quite like Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon, but yeah, he's kind of at the end of his rope, and then he has to like deal with a case, and this one takes him pretty deep into white supremacy, and it's a lot of fun. It's actually pretty well done. John Frankenheimer really knows how to mount a set piece, so I like that. I watched a lot of dysfunctional family movies for some reason. I might have to do a dysfunctional family podcast now that I watched all these films. I watched Shoot the Moon.
I love Shoot the Moon so much. That movie is great.
It's really good. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I kind of totally forgot about it, and it's really, really good. And Diane Keaton's really good.
Diane Keaton is fabulous in that movie.
And speaking of which, I went to see Palms.
How come we can't get a Diane Keaton release in France? Like when it's released, for some reason the French, they make us wait like 3 more months. Like it took me forever to see Book Club. I'm probably not going to see Palms until it's going to be like a Christmas release in France. But is it good? Is he good?
It's not a great movie, but she's really good, and I think the movie is actually surprisingly heartfelt, whereas the movie wasn't really. They're not really selling you that with the trailer. Yeah. It's a lot more emotional than I thought it would be, and I like that. And I think Book Club is a better made film and probably has a much better ensemble film. Whereas really this is more. It has an ensemble, but I think Diane Keaton and Jackie Weaver get most of the good stuff. And so it's, to me, more like a buddy film than an ensemble film. And I think both of them are really good in the film.
Yeah, I'm dying to see it. Can't wait.
And so I liked that. I liked it, so I definitely would recommend it to you.
Yeah. Well, I'll basically see anything that has Diane Keaton. So I went through a period. So I've been obsessed with Diane Keaton my entire life, and I went through a period like in the Bush years when she was making a bunch of movies where she played like bitchy moms,
right?
And like the Family Stone, like those kinds of movies. Yeah. And I got really annoyed with that whole period. But I've liked the last several movies that she's been in. I'm glad that she's still so prolific.
Yeah, she's not even a mom in this, so.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Rich in Love was another dysfunctional family movie, and I actually had Albert Finney as well. I really like that. Rich and Famous, I watched that. Last of Sheila. I'm just going to skim over these. Now Nowhere and Now Apocalypse. I finished that series, and I revisited Greg Araki's Nowhere. So that was fun to do that. Night Moves. I really like that. It's good noir. Looker with Albert Finney. I guess I had an Albert Finney fest.
Yeah.
Looker I picked up on Blu-ray. That was really a lot of fun. I watched 3 movies by Peter Hyams, 2010, Outland and Time Cop. I enjoyed all of those. I watched Andy Sidaris' double feature of Malibu Express and Hard Ticket to Hawaii. And Hard Ticket to Hawaii is a much better, I guess if you want to call it a better film, but a more entertaining film than, say, Malibu Express, but I like both. Hard Ticket to Hawaii also has a song in it that once I listen to, it sticks in my head for like days. So, thank you, Andy Sidaris, for that. Tammy and the T-Rex.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yes. It's a very, very special film that needs to be seen to be believed. Denise Richards and Paul Walker. Paul Walker's brain put into the head of a T-Rex at some point.
Who came up with this concept?
The director of Mac and Me and Mannequin 2 and so many great films like Standing Ovation, which was from 2010. Another one of his winners. Another one that needs to be seen more. All great films. Stuart Raffles is a great filmmaker. I love him.
Yeah, I will never speak a bad word about Mac and Me. It's one of my favorite movies. I love it.
So good. The kids made me go see Pokemon Pikachu, Detective, whatever. Not my kind of thing.
Really? No. I'm shocked.
I watch these kids. I go see these kids movies with them, and I just really, I absolutely forget them once they're over because I try, but they're not for me. I watched Hard Target with Joyce, and she likes a good action movie, and man, Hard Target is a lot of fun.
Which one's Hard Target?
Van Damme, John Woo's first film in America. It's full of slow-mo. It's full of like everything you want in a John Woo movie. It's in this movie, and you mix that with some of like Jean-Claude's stuff, and Sam Raimi has an influence on this movie. He produced it, and he oversaw the production. So there's a bit of Sam Raimi influence in it. So it's kind of has a stew of like things that are pretty amazing in itself. It's fun from beginning to end. And Van Damme's crunchy mullet is crazy and needs to be put in a museum. And finally, Long Shot. I went to go see that in theaters. That's the Charlize Theron and Seth Rogen. Romantic comedy. Yeah, and I was like, I guess I was going in with like, oh, it's going to be okay, and actually really liked it. It's actually surprisingly funny. It's really funny, and they have really good chemistry, and it kind of does what you want in a romantic comedy and in a modern romantic comedy really well. And I would definitely recommend it to you.
Okay.
I think it has some fun music choices, and just their general chemistry is pretty great, and it has a political bent to it, which is fun. So I definitely recommend it, and I think it's a bit underrated. I think it's just kind of been swept under the carpet a little bit here. So,
well, it's just playing down the street from me. I'll go check it out.
There you go. Awesome.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. It's a lot of stuff. So let's get into our indie films. Do you have honorable mentions outside of the 6 through 10s or anything else?
I'm sure I do. I didn't write down a list. I'll tell you the one. I don't have a specific movie, but I really wanted to include something LGBT related on my list, and I was going back through like LGBT films that came out in the 80s, and I couldn't find one really that I felt super passionately about. There are some that I really like, but not most of the movies that I think of as being really great LGBT films came out in the 90s. So that was kind of disappointing. I'm sure there must be some out there that I'm just not thinking of, but that was the big one. But no, I don't really have a runners-up list that I know. What did you come up with?
I have tons. So
yeah.
First, I'm going to mention all the things previously covered on the podcast: Angel, Beyond Therapy, Break-In, Certain Fury, The Chocolate War, Crimes of Passion, Dirty Dancing. These are all films that were released by small companies, so they're not like major studio films. The Exterminator, The First Time, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Hairspray, Hell Night, Hiding Out, Hollywood Shuffle, Hunk, Inside Moves, The Last American Virgin, Liana. Shout out to John Sayles. I think I've talked about Liana and Return of the Sea Caucus 7 before, but he's kind of like the godfather of 80s independent cinema. And so I talked about two of the films that I like most of his from the 80s. I kind of want to get to Brother from Another Planet too, which is also really good. Made to Order, Mannequin, My Tutor, Mystic Pizza, Night of the Comet, Once Bitten, Parting Glances, Prick Up Your Ears, Reform School Girls, Rivals, River's Edge, Scorpion, Something Special, Square Dance, Street Smart, Teen Witch, Tough Turf, Valley Girl, Vendetta, Wanted Dead or Alive, and Welcome to 18 were all discussed previously in this podcast, and they were all released by smaller companies. I have a lot of honorable mentions. Alphabet City and God Created Woman, Anna, Apartment Zero, Blood Simple, The Brother from Another Planet, which I just mentioned, China Girl, Christian F., Crimes of the Heart, Dance with a Stranger, The Decline of Western Civilization 2, The Metal Years, Desert Hearts, The Dirt Bike Kid, yes, I like it, Drugstore Cowboy, Earth Girls Are Easy, The Further Adventures of Tennessee Buck, yep, Hawks, Heaven, speaking of Diane Keaton, Kiss of the Spider.
Can I ask you? Have you seen Heaven?
Yeah, it's on my. This is my honorable mentions. Yes.
Yeah. And that's a great. Yeah, it's on your honorable mentions. Can I just say something? I saw Heaven when it came out, and I've been looking for it forever. Do you have it on DVD?
I don't have it. I don't have it at all. I watched it. I think I watched it on VHS in the past, and I think it might have been on YouTube at some point.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear it held up, because I haven't seen it in such a long time. I wasn't sure, but I remember Heaven being like really kooky and idiosyncratic in that Diane Keaton kind of way, and it was just a really fun movie. I loved it.
It definitely reflects her personality for sure.
Yeah.
Kiss of the Spider Woman, The Ladies Club, Lust in the Dust, which I think is getting a Blu-ray release. Maurice, My Dinner with Andre, One Night Stand from 1984, Patty Rocks, Perfect Strangers from 1984, The Perils of Gwendolyn, The Land of the Yik Yak, The Personals, which I had on my top 10 list for a bit, but I revisited it, and I like it a lot still, but not quite top 10. Promised Land, Pumping Iron 2, The Women, Sister Sister, Slam Dance, Special Effects, Spike of Bensonhurst, Stop Making Sense, Street Walkin', Suburbia, The Times of Harvey Milk, Times Square, True Love, The Wizard of Loneliness, Working Girls, that's Working Girls plural, from 1987, and The Year My Voice Broke. All good independent films that I wanted to mention somewhere, so they're here.
Well, and you mentioned 3 LGBTs, Something Wild, Morris, and The Life and Times of Harvey Milk. Certainly any of those movies could have been, those are all sort of classic movies, I think. But, it's interesting. You mentioned Hairspray. And I forgot that was an independent film because when I look back at that point in John Waters' career, it seemed like Hairspray just it seemed so mainstream to me. Like, I think I saw that as a double feature with Back to the Beach. And, and so I forgot it. It's kind of hard looking back. The other thing, too, is I wanted to include a Cassavetes film. So I was thinking Gloria. Right. But when I looked at it, Gloria was actually released by, I think it was Paramount.
Yeah, I think either Columbia or Paramount, one of the two, yeah.
Yeah. So he wasn't even, he was working in the mainstream at that point as well. So, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting time, I think, for independent filmmakers because the ones that were sort of coming up through the ranks in the 70s, by the 80s, it's sort of entrenched themselves in sort of more mainstream fare.
It's true. I mean, that's why it gets tricky when you clarify what is an independent film. And I try to stay away from ones that were released through a major studio, but it's not to say that there weren't films that were worked in an independent film way, like, say, a Cassavetes film, because he was still trying to make movies that way within the studio setting. So it's just kind of, and some of these movies, I think one of my picks today was a movie that was actually released by a major studio, but it was a self-financed film, so it gets tricky to clarify. But I guess as we talk about it, we could do that.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through our 6 through 10s. But we're just not going to elaborate on them because it could take us forever. But what was your 10?
Well, my 10, I'm glad we're not going to elaborate because I think everything has already been said. But my number 10 is Heathers. And this is one of the films that I did see when it was released. And what's interesting about that is I thought for the longest time I was the only person in the world who saw Heathers because nobody, up through the 90s, I was asking people, have you seen Heathers? And it just seemed like nobody had seen it. And in retrospect, I think it's kind of, we forget that Heathers wasn't actually that huge of a hit when it came out. And in fact, I think I saw this at my dollar, my B-rate movie theater that was down the street from where we lived. It just didn't have a big release. And I don't think it really caught on until at some point in the 90s. I want to say maybe with Mean Girls, maybe that sort of brought it back into public consciousness. I don't know. But for a long time, it was this really special movie just for me. Like, I was the only person who had seen it, and I loved it. I loved the way that it satirized all of the teen movies that had come out throughout the 80s. I loved how radically anti-establishment it was. I mean, it made fun of everything from schools to parents to the media. And I just liked the overall message of this film, which is basically, it's all bullshit. You're too self-aware to kid yourself. So be Veronica, do your own thing and you're going to be just fine. And at least for me, Winona, this really solidified for me why Winona Ryder is such a great Generation X icon. I mean, we've talked about her before on our Teen Angst podcast. But she was always a little bit of an outsider in her films, and she was always very self-aware. She always bucked conventions and did her own thing. And for that reason, I just thought she was perfect as Veronica. This movie, I mean, did you have that experience? I don't know. Did you see this movie when it came out?
Yeah, I actually saw it theatrically, and I discussed this movie on the podcast before.
Yeah,
I believe with Ben Shure, we had exactly the same experience where it was like we thought it was like a movie that only we saw, or we were the only ones in our group that saw that film.
Yeah.
And so it was special that way.
Maybe everybody saw it and nobody wanted to talk about it, or I don't know. But I'm happy. Now it's having its 30th anniversary, so there's been a lot of stuff written about it. And the New York Times I don't know if you saw it, but the New York Times just did this whole really amazing feature on it and this retrospective of how important it was to the teen movie genre. But at the same time, there was also a piece that was making its way around Facebook, I think, written by a millennial who thought the movie was mean and crass and insensitive. This poor millennial kid just did not get it at all.
Right. I laugh at all those articles, and I laugh at all these these stars from, like, let's say like Molly Ringwald, who just like who go back and say that these movies are problematic. I'm like,
I know.
Please.
I know. I'm with you. Yeah. I'm glad, and obviously Heathers has had a lasting influence. I mean, Mean Girls, Jawbreaker, Scream Queens. I mean, just bitchy popular girls being dicks, basically. And so yeah, my number 10 was Heathers.
That segues nicely into my number 10, which is also a teen film, but a bit of, I guess there's some similarities, I would say.
You think? Oh, I see. Yeah,
there's
you're right.
shades of Heathers, because it's about three bitchy, spoiled girls who kind of cause trouble among their peer group. And in this one, they're possibly responsible for the death of a boy who's mentally challenged, I would say. And
a boy played by like a 35-year-old man, by the way.
Yeah, when they're not these three girls, everyone in this movie is at least 35 or older.
Yeah.
This movie is called Slipping into Darkness from 1988, a little film that still remains a little film that a lot of people haven't watched. It came out on MCEG Virgin Vision VHS, where I first saw it, the video store. I now own that tape. I've had it for quite a while now. I watch it once in a while over the years. It's like I always thought it had like this weird Canadian-looking vibe. I assumed it was a Canadian film until IMDb came around, and I could see that, it was actually shot in Nebraska, and not Canada, but close enough, I guess. It has that vibe to it. It has some very strange choices with portraying the characters, and their motivations are kind of very strange. There's biker guys with weird fake facial hair. If you go up on the internet, there's this thing called the internet. If you go on there and Google, if you type in "Slipping into Darkness," the VHS box, the VHS cover, you'll see that the cover is so evocative. There's like some weird stuff going on in it. But everything that's on the cover actually happens in the movie. So whoever was doing the artwork, whoever drew that beautiful artwork, clearly watched the movie, because everything actually does happen in that movie, like in that way. And I just love these kinds of weird little quirky movies that are just kind of like out there, and just like you're not quite sure what's going to happen or where it's going. There's kind of a thriller noirish element to it, but they're teens, and it gets kind of dark. I like that it was a female filmmaker. Eleanor Gaver directed this film, and there's some interesting choices. Some of the acting is spotty. I would say Michelle Johnson is really good in the film. She's the standout of the cast. Her and her ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
This movie loves ice cream.
Lots of ice cream. Yeah. Yes, lots of ice cream.
I'm
waiting for you to finish so I can talk about ice cream.
No, this was your first viewing of it. So I'm really curious.
It was, and about 5 minutes into it, I sent you a message saying, "What the fuck are you making me watch? What is this movie?" Like, literally, within the first 5 minutes, there was like a lady dancing by herself to that creepy music, like kids singing, and there's a lady in a bathtub who's naked, and these two girls wander in, and she's eating an ice cream in the bathtub, and she offers them an ice cream, and they're shocked, and she says, "What's the matter? Are you afraid you're going to catch something?" Because obviously that would be your that would be your appropriate response, right? There's like everybody's eating ice cream in this movie, and then on top of that, there's like these weird arty elements to it. There's like Lynchian.
I was going to say David Lynch is very
these Lynchian atonal music cues and industrial set pieces and things like that. And honestly, I loved it. It was so much fun, and it's so goofy. I still don't understand what the ice cream is doing. Everybody is eating ice cream in this movie, and I don't know if it's supposed to be a metaphor.
It's a Nebraska thing. That's what you do in Nebraska. You eat ice cream.
It has one of the goofiest seduction scenes I've ever seen in a movie. There's this guy who's kind of like leaning back and he's rubbing his chest in front of this girl, and he's like, "What's this do for you? You like that? I got a raincoat in my wallet." Like, really? Does that work in Nebraska?
It does.
I guess. But it's really fun, and yeah, glad I saw it. I loved it.
Yeah, it's one of those. I guess part of it you could say is River's Edge like, because this involves a dead person and who's responsible and how the friends deal with a death. But that's where it ends. I think it becomes its own thing, and
yeah, lots of twists and turns at the end of this movie,
for sure. And some of them kind of might be questionable, but also are interesting choices too at the same time. So you really kind of like I have a lot of respect for the filmmakers just to go to the places that this movie goes to. And Slipping Into Darkness, it also has a theme song.
Oh, yeah, and you won't get it out of your head. It's the theme song by War, and it plays as often as somebody licks an ice cream cone, which is pretty much the entire movie. So.
It's very unusual, because like War, it has like almost like a Caribbean flavor to it, and in this movie shot in Nebraska, so strange.
Yeah, it's a funky theme song.
I applaud all of its weird choices, and
me too.
It must be seen, this movie. And you found a copy. It's really hard to find, guys, but if you could track it down, I applaud you, like Daniel did.
Yeah, you'll all find it on some. I had to go to some weird Serbian or Eastern European streaming site where apparently this movie was huge, but I couldn't. That was the only place I could track this down. So, but it's well worth it. So you should all look for it.
This movie is huge in Nebraska and ice cream shops and Serbia.
And Serbia.
and Meep's video. All right, that's our number 10. What's your number 9?
My number 9 is Smithereens, the Susan Seidelman film. And I have loved this movie ever since this was definitely something I saw on video. And what I like about this movie, well, there are a couple things. One, I just love the almost documentary way it captures the downtown scene in New York. And, you get that old New York downtown scene, which is dirty. It's kind of falling apart. It's kind of skanky. You see, graffiti on the subways and on the apartment buildings. And, you would know better than me, but it's a New York that sadly no longer exists. And it was just such a unique time. It feels very like CBGBs, and that really is kind of the aesthetic of the whole film. I mean, this film does feel really punk and very DIY. And in fact, the main character played by Susan Berman, her name is Ren. She's a young punk, and she's the other reason why I love this movie so much. I think she's such a great character. I mean, first off, she's got this really great look. She looks like Jane Weedland from the Go-Go's. And she's this young, kind of spunky girl. She's very independent. She's come to the city from, I think, New Jersey. And she's totally lost. Like, she doesn't know where she fits in this punk scene. And she's trying to find a place. And I just thought that was really relatable, because I remember when I first moved to San Francisco, I think anytime a young person moves to the city and like tries to find themselves in the city, it can be hard, especially if you don't know anybody. And so even though Ren makes a lot of mistakes, she's not very nice to people, she's selfish, she's arrogant, she does lots of stupid things you do when you're a late teen or somebody in your early 20s. You still sort of see her, you can relate to her. I mean, I made a lot of everybody makes those mistakes when they're young. So, she's just a really great and relatable character, and has a killer soundtrack. And yeah, I love it. Love it.
Yeah, I'm with you at that one. It was one I saw it after I saw Desperately Seeking Susan, so I wasn't quite up on it yet. I guess I it's one of those movies. Oh, I have to see her first film, and when I did, I just was, this is a great beginning to a filmmaker who I really like and admire, and it shows it has some rough qualities to it, but that's what makes it special and unique and perfect for what it was trying to portray. That scene of New York City of that time and that lifestyle and I lived in New York and I worked in the East Village, so I know that area well and it really captures that vibe really well. And of course, like you said, a time that's gone completely.
Yeah.
So it's become like a historical document of its time.
Right.
And it's for those of you who are maybe not as interested in the story. It's worth watching alone just to see that time period and the way it's captured. And I think Susan Seidelman has one of those directors who just kind of is sadly just not as thought of as much as say like a Jim Jarmusch or whoever. But I think she's great, and I like all of her films of the '80s a lot, and certainly this one too. I think I really like the central performance by Susan Berman. I think it's one of those characters that you could really hate as much as because of her choices, but it captures a time for young people who do make these kinds of choices and may not be immediately likable, but you have to kind of go on that journey with them, and I think I really like her in it. So.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm not one of these. I don't need to have a main character who's sweet or relatable,
right.
or I mean, that's part of the reason why we see movies. I want to see all facets of people, and I really respect that Susan Berman plays Ren so, she's vulnerable, she's complicated, she's vulnerable and needy, but at the same time she does everything to push people away. And it's a level of complexity I'm not sure we see in a lot of movies these days. So
definitely challenging, and I like that about it. My pal Alex Ross Perry, who I actually worked with at Kim's, and he makes those kinds of films and characters these days. Where characters are not immediately likable and will challenge you, and I like that what he does with that. And I know he was inspired by films like Smithereens. So that's
great.
Those kinds of films that were coming out of New York at the time are pretty special to me, and I always hold them pretty dear to my heart. So I'm glad you picked it.
Yeah.
What is my number 9? My number 9 is, I guess, an oddball choice for me. Room with a View, the James Ivory movie. I guess when you think of a James Ivory movie, you think of a movie like this or Howard's End, an E.M. Forster adaptation, and maybe like something that as Oscar bait or whatever. But it was a relatively low budgeted film. It was a $3 million budgeted film. So it goes to show you what you can do with a limited budget. You can make a film that has a bit of a grander scale, and you could tell a story or an adaptation in this case, in a very special way, in a way that was very unique to what Jim Ivory, like I know, but my pal Jim Ivory,
Jimmy,
my pal Jim Ivory was doing. He was doing these kinds of films that definitely appeal to certain audiences. Maybe not everyone is going to be down for Room with a View, but it definitely attracts me to a certain sensibility that I like and I want to see in a film like this. And I really like it. And I really like Helena Bonham Carter in this film. I think she's really good, and a great supporting cast. You have Maggie Smith and Judi Dench, who, of course, are pretty well known to fans for people who like certain kinds of films. But then you have eccentric performances like by Julian Sands and Denholm Elliott, who play a father-son who are pretty unique, I would say. And then you have Simon Cowell, who I really like. He's really good here. And Daniel Day-Lewis, who some people may know. Playing basically the most uptight person ever.
Seriously.
So it's no surprise to me that he chose his last role ever to be that movie Phantom Thread, because he's playing a similarly uptight person in that movie. He kind of specializes in that to me. I mean, he's also played some more loosey-goosey characters, but for the most part, he's really good at playing uptight, and he does that really well here. And it's a beautifully made film, and I like a lot of those films that divide up into chapters and kind of go that way with the way it's trying to unfold its story. And I love it, and every time I watch it, I get really into it. I get into the music by I think Richard Roberts did the score, and seeing Florence is just beautiful, and so I get caught up in it every single time I see it. So it's totally, even though it doesn't seem like a movie for me, it is totally a movie for me because it sucks me in.
I love that you chose A Room with a View. I mean, when I was I was a lit major in grad school, and all of the students were such snobs when it came to Merchant Ivory, because everybody had this idea that Merchant Ivory was too pretty and too precious and whatever. I love Ian Forster. I love Merchant Ivory. I think you're right. It's so beautiful, and all of the actors, like across the board, are amazing. You're right. Florence never looked better. And after watching it recently, I realized I just live a few hours from Florence. I'm going to go to Florence and reenact that final scene from the movie with Julian Sands.
Nice.
Who I love. I love Julian Sands in this movie. I love the character. He plays this guy named George, who's having this kind of existential crisis. He sees question marks in everything, and he's asking, what does it all mean? And I like the values of this movie. I mean, basically the movie is teaching you to be true to your own nature, be good to people, get out and see the world and travel.
Right.
And don't try and be something that, society is telling you should be. If you have a chance to go skinny dipping with Julian Sands, don't let that opportunity pass you by.
Right.
It's just a super delightful movie. And you're right, Daniel Day-Lewis is hysterical in this movie. I mean, he's so snobbish and effete and, precious. And, you just want to punch him. But fortunately, Lucy makes the right choice at the end of the movie. So it all works out. But yeah, good choice. I like this movie a lot.
Yeah, I think I like that you mentioned that. It's about in a world that's so buttoned up, like say Daniel Day-Lewis, it's time to unbutton, Julian Sands does. And
take off your pants.
Exactly. So there's a lot of reasons to watch it for everyone. So
yeah, God, I miss Merchant Ivory so much. It's one of the things about 80s and 90s cinema that just one of the great things about that time. It's too bad Merchant died, right?
Yeah, Merchant.
Ivory's.
Yeah, his partner died, and Jim, my pal Jim, he's way up there in age, but he's definitely left an impressive body of work behind him. So and he's still working.
He produced Call Me by Your Name.
He wrote it too, I believe.
He wrote it.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's awesome. What's your number 8?
My number 8 is Smooth Talk with Laura Dern, and Smooth Talk is actually the movie is based on a short story by Joyce Carol Oates, who based her short story on a real life serial killer who lived in Arizona, I think sometime in the 60s. And this guy was very strange. He was a serial killer in his 30s, and he was able to pass himself off as a teenager, and he hung out with a group of teenagers, and some of the teenage girls he would seduce, and some of them he would seduce and kill. And what's even weirder is that his group of teenage friends knew that this was going on, and for some reason they kind of just kept it to themselves. And this is pre-Manson murder stuff. So it was just a really shocking real life murder tale. And so that's how Joyce Carol Oates came up with the idea. And the movie version, Smooth Talk, stars Laura Dern, who plays this girl, Connie. And Connie is this typical rebellious teenage girl. She hangs out with her friends. She goes to the beach. She goes to the mall. And by the way, the mall battle scenes in this movie are incredible. I mean, they're like up there with Fast Times. They're so cool. And she gets into trouble a lot. She's trying to be older than who she really is. And one day she meets up with this guy named Arnold Friend, who's played by Treat Williams. And Arnold Friend is the character that's based on this real-life serial killer. He is sexy, he's scary, and basically throughout the movie, he tries to seduce Laura Dern. And the whole film builds up to this really tense confrontation with him standing on the front porch of Laura Dern's family's home. She's been left home alone while her family has gone off somewhere. And I don't know how long this scene goes on, but it goes on for a really long time, where he's just talking to her through a screen door, trying to seduce her, and eventually he does. And then the film gets really interesting because the director, Joyce Capra, instead of actually showing us what happens at the moment of seduction when he actually is able to come into contact with Connie, the camera sort of like pulls away and we only see the after effect of what's gone on. So we don't really know if he's raped her, if she's willingly given herself over to him, or what the story is. But it's that's just stylistically, some of the choices made in telling the story are really interesting. But Laura Dern is reason enough to see this movie. I mean, she creates this really complex character. She's totally believable. Connie is at this weird place in her life where she's sort of straddling adolescence and adulthood. And she's sexual, but at the same time, she's very virginal. She has all of these sorts of dichotomies going on in her life that make her just, really, really complex. And watching it now, I mean, it's so interesting because when I think back to the 80s starlets of the time, like Molly Ringwald, for example, Molly Ringwald I never thought was going to ever be in danger. Like, I always thought Molly Ringwald would sort of rise to the top at the end of all of her movies. But when you watch Laura Dern in this film, the thing I think you're left with most is her vulnerability. She's kind of broken. She's not a victim. The film refuses to victimize her, but she's just kind of a mess. And you believe her. I mean, it's no wonder Laura Dern really went on to have this incredible career in indie films. I mean, she can really do anything. She's great at playing these low-key character roles, and she's had this brilliant career playing sort of complex women like Connie. So, yeah. So, what do you think about Smooth Talk?
I mean, there's no surprise that she's gone on to be one of our great actors, and because like you see it here in a movie like this, where she's young, and she's pretty young here, and she gives such a complicated performance at such a young age, and she definitely had it in her DNA to be this great actress. I mean, with her parents, of course, but she really pulls this role off so well. Like, you totally believe her. You totally believe her as this girl at this age, and going through this kind of crisis, like quiet crisis, where you're not quite sure what she's going through, and she's growing up, and hormones, play a factor in that, and all teenagers of that age, and some of the decisions that they might make, and we're not sure if she's affected by just the relationship with her mom, not having. There's no dad in the picture, right?
He is, but the mom is played by Mary Kay Place, who has this amazing presence. It's so big, it almost pushes. I don't even know who plays the dad.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about the dad.
Pushed to the side.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes,
but he's in there. He's just kind of sidelined.
Right. Yeah, she's constantly not helping her dad, and just not being helpful with her parents, which I can understand, as a parent now, having small children who are not incredibly helpful and don't seem very interested in wanting to be that. So I'm going to have my own set of challenges later with that. But the movie just realistically sets up this world between this mom and this daughter, and then, of course, entering with Treat Williams into the picture, and making this dark force that she's constantly has to deal with. He represents some things about becoming an adult that are scary, and he becomes quite a dark presence in her life that she's initially attracted to, as we all are. And then we kind of have to deal with the effects of how that the effects it might have by kind of flirting with the darkness. And the movie makes some very interesting points, and it's so interesting how a film like this about teens can do that, and just it shows you what independent films can do, whereas a modern big budgeted studio film might not portray as well or as deftly. It would just be glossed over a bit more, whereas this goes out of its way to kind of make these suggestions about the big things that or make these allusions to things that are kind of unique and different for films.
Well, I like that I really like what you just said about Treat Williams' character sort of representing darkness, or, I think that's really the best way to see his character. I mean, he's sort of just symbolic. Something has happened. We don't know what happens with these two characters. We never really know. But one thing we know is that she has touched darkness. She's somehow been, forced to grow up in some way. And you can project all kinds of things onto his character, which is what I think that's one of the things that does make this movie so unique. It's not like the filmmakers are forcing you to take a position on what's happened here, and so it's all pretty ambiguous, and I'm okay with that. I like that. So
I think initially when I first saw it, I was a little bit cold to that aspect of the movie. I kind of didn't know what was happening, and I wanted to know. But as I've watched it over the years, I'm like, that's kind of its greatest strength, is that it doesn't immediately tell you the answers. You kind of have to figure it out in your head, and or just come to whatever conclusion you want. And I just love that it does that. And the true power of independent film does that, and I appreciate it. And they're all really good in the film, and I think she's especially good.
Laura Dern can do anything.
Yep. My number 8 is another teen film that it's not quite as serious, I would say. Shag from 1989 is the story of these girls who basically just shows you their friendships and them at Myrtle Beach and wanting to dance and perform and just have relationships with each other and with some dudes. It's not an incredibly complicated film, but at the same time, I find myself drawn to it pretty often. Zelda Barron was the director of this film, and I like these films from female directors and getting that point of view, and I like how the friendships are portrayed. It's not about, I would say, bitchy girls that you'd imagine these girls from the South might be, as they are sometimes portrayed. But they're kind of, they're friends, and they have their ups and downs, and they take this road trip adventure, and it traces that. And I don't know, I seem to just watch it and enjoy the dynamics of the friendships and the actors who play them. Phoebe Cates, Bridget Fonda, Paige Hanna, which I believe was Daryl Hannah's sister. Annabeth Gish are the girls, and they're all really great, and they all are different in their own way, and play off each other in different interesting ways. Scott Coffey and Robert Russler and Tyrone Power Jr. are some of the guys. And I don't know, it's just a good mix of people in it. And every time I watch it, I just kind of get drawn into it. I know it's a favorite of my wife's, and we watched it a few times together. And I remember seeing it. This is one of the 2 movies that I saw in theaters. I saw this at the UA Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn, along with Weekend at Bernie's, and I went to see When Harry Met Sally again for the second time. So I saw all 3 of those movies. I snuck into. I'm not sure which one I paid for. It might have been Weekend at Bernie's, and I snuck into Shag and When Harry Met Sally again. And I had a great day at the movies. And
this movie came out in 89, is that right?
Yeah, it was summer 89. July 21st, 1989 is actually when it came out.
Okay. Yeah, because, I was thinking, this movie kind of passed me by when it came out. I didn't see it until much, much later. But what's so interesting to me is that by 89... there had already been so many movies that had come out, like Peggy Sue and Hairspray, Stand By Me, all Dirty Dancing, all of these movies that looked back at 1960s. And of course, this was that great era of like movies about baby boomer nostalgia and things like that. So this movie kind of seemed a little bit late to the game, I think, when it came out. Maybe that's why I didn't see it. But now, going back and watching it, I think it's actually one of my favorites because you're so right. The chemistry with all of the actors are great. The period recreation is perfect.
It really does feel like that time period. Yeah,
it does. It looks really good. It combines a lot of my favorite movie genres actually from the 80s. The dance movie. I love the baby boomer nostalgia movies. I love teen girl romances from that time. So it's kind of a perfect movie. Although I do have to say I have one issue with this movie, and I'm coming at this from a 2019 elevated perspective.
I know what you're gonna say.
Okay, so the rebel flag, yes.
Yep. In the title.
In the title. I mean, it just makes you realize that, we were all so back then, I don't want to say ignorant, but I think because people knew, but I think people were just so caught up in the romance of the past and all the good feelings that the past inspired that nobody actually took the time to realize, wait a minute, that's a rebel flag. That doesn't represent good times. Happy America. So yeah, that part of the movie kind of bothers me, but definitely bothers me. But
I wrote down on my list, perhaps not the most PC movie on my list.
If they got rid of the rebel flag, I would be good. But
right.
The other thing I noticed is that I think that you're right. Paige Hanna is Daryl Hannah's sister, and from what I could tell, she's actually wearing the same exact glasses that Daryl Hannah wore in Still Magnolias. Right? They're like
they looked exactly the same. Yeah,
I bet they traded. Yeah.
I sometimes forget Daryl Hannah is in Steel Magnolias. I don't know. I guess maybe because her look is so different.
Yeah.
But then she has a bit of a. Doesn't she have a bit of a costume change in Steel Magnolias, or I can't remember.
Yeah, she goes to Trudy's and gets a makeover.
As you do, a good makeover.
Yeah, as you do. Yeah. By Dolly Parton. Yeah, yeah.
One of the things, I guess. Movies, certain movies of certain time periods, you kind of have to overlook certain things. Yes, that obviously that part of the movie. But I always wondered, Phoebe Cates is playing a Southern belle. That was interesting casting. I mean, that's something you would immediately think of as a Southern belle because she is someone who is part Asian, and
right.
So the movie doesn't draw any attention to that fact that she is. So I think it's an interesting choice of casting.
Yeah, that didn't even cross my mind. I assume they casted her because she plays uptight really well or something.
She does, yeah.
Her character is pretty uptight in this. But yeah, you're right. An Asian Southern belle. Half Asian Southern belle, yeah. Well, why not?
Yeah, and I like a lot of these movies where it's, there's a lot of movies in the 80s where it's about guys who are having this weekend of either getting laid or just going out and just doing some crazy stuff over a period of time. And there are those films, though, of the 80s that had, like, you had Welcome to 18, where it's about the girls and their wacky adventures, or where the boys are, 84, is about that. This one, of course, is about these girls who are having a weekend because one of them is getting married, and that's, of course, Phoebe Cates's uptight character is getting married. But I think, to me, the real star, Bridget Fonda is great in the movie, by the way. I think she's really good, but I think
I miss Bridget Fonda. I have a note here. Come back, Bridget. Totally. I know she's retired, but I miss seeing her in movies a lot.
We definitely miss Bridget Fonda, and she's really good here too. But Annabeth Gish, of course, will always steal a movie for me, and she always seemed to do that in the 80s.
She's so darn likable. I mean, who wouldn't like Annabelle Gish? I'm with you.
Who wouldn't like a fun character named Pudge? You know, she's so cute in it, and her relationship with Scott Coffey is is pretty adorable. And you have the more conventionally attractive guys like Robert Russler and Tyrone Power Jr. and a few of the others, but that relationship between Annabeth Gish and Scott Coffey is pretty adorable, and part of.
I don't know if I should admit this. Recently, for some reason, I've had this weird obsession with Scott Coffey. I don't know why, but like I was looking for Scott Coffey on Facebook, and I saw he lives in Germany, and now I'm hoping one day I'll wander and I'll meet him or something. I don't know why. I'm not particularly excited by Scott Coffey, but he is really good in this movie. So
a David Lynch favorite too. I think he.
That's true. He is. Yeah, he's been in a couple of his films. Yeah.
All right. What is your number 7?
Well, I mentioned it already. My number 7 is Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which came out in '89, right? Yeah, '89. So it's also having its 30th anniversary this year. It's Steven Soderbergh's first film, and to me, I think I've seen all of Soderbergh's films. Everything he's done for TV, I think I've seen it all. This is probably the one that I go back to the most. It's lean, it's mean. There's not a scene. There's not a word of dialogue that's wasted or unnecessary. Andy McDowell, Laura San Giacomo, James Spader, and Peter Gallagher. He got really just career high performances out of everybody. And I did see this in the cinema when it came out. It was a big deal in '89 for a couple of reasons. One, the title. Sex, Lies, and Videotapes seemed to imply that, it was a very provocative title in '89. And I think we all thought we were going to go see some sort of quasi-porno movie, with videotaping or something like that. But you quickly, and when you're watching this movie, really from the first scene, Soderbergh undermines any expectations. This is not an exploitation film. It's really low key, it's atmospheric, and you don't really even see any sex in the whole thing. I mean, there's one sort of brief sex scene with Peter Gallagher and Laura San Giacomo, but you don't see anything. Instead, it's just people talking. And they're talking about sex, they're talking about love, about relationships, and I don't know. Again, I think that's another reason why in '89 this movie was such a big deal, because I don't remember, outside of maybe like Woody Allen movies, lots of movies where grown-ups are just sitting around talking about grown-up kinds of things. And so the film was really, I think it left an impression because it was cerebral, and it wasn't melodramatic. It was, like I said, it was quiet. And yeah, it's just a movie basically about people having to overcome sort of emotional problems or sexual related problems. James Spader is a voyeur. Andy McDowell plays this repressed housewife. Laura San Giacomo plays her sister, who's really jealous and angry. And then Peter Gallagher plays her philandering, lying husband. Yeah. I don't know. When I look back at this, like I said, the '90s independent films really started with this movie. I think it was kind of a sea change, I think, in Hollywood. I think it was a sea change in the culture. When I look back at '89, it seemed like everything was going indie. The movies were going indie. Twin Peaks was on TV, and Twin Peaks was very auteur. And then the music scene was changing. It was the early days of grunge. So I kind of feel like Sex, Lies, and Videotape really contributed to something larger that was happening at the time in American culture. So yeah, Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Yeah, it definitely does feel more early 90s now that I think about it than late 80s.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it's funny how that, looking back at something from 30 years ago can do that. Like, it just changes your perspective on the times. And this is one of those movies that really does best represent independent film period of that time. It just, it shows you, where things were heading and where things are going, and a benchmark film for independent film for sure. And James Spader was the reason I watched this film, because I was really into James Spader. And I saw this one in the theater, actually. It's one of the few that I saw in the theater. And I really liked it. And I really liked his performance. I thought it was unusual, and his choices were different. There was an intensity. I call it the James Spader stare, was perfected in this movie. The James Spader stare, which actually got to happen to me at some point in my life, where James Spader stared at me in a very creepy way.
Really?
Yes. I don't know if I mentioned this story in the podcast. I probably have, where I was at Kim's Video, and this is like when I was the store manager at Kim's Underground on Bleecker Street, and I was putting away some VHS tape boxes, because that was around back then. And I went. There's like 3 stairs, and you go down into another part of the video store. And when I did that, I guess he was surprised by my coming down. He turned around and stared, and like he was startled, but also like in very intense stare. Like he was like, "What are you doing here?" Like I can just hear him saying
so many
that.
scary jerks. I'd be afraid he'd kick my ass in Kim's Video.
So a bit of a stare down, and then I tried to play it pretty cool with like celebrities and people that I really liked and admired. I just didn't want to be the guy who gushes over people. That wasn't what I wanted to do. That's not what we did at Kim's at that period. I mean, though we had pretty much everyone come through the doors that was in New York at the time. So I just kind of played it cool, and but I'm like, oh my god, that was creepy. That was weird. So yeah, that stare, that performance, he just really does a great job at saying so much without having to say sometimes words, which is what he was really good at doing in this film. And when he did say things, they were pretty out there and offbeat, and he had an interesting take on life, and certainly shook up Andy McDowell's world. And I like this. I would pair this one well with Green Card, which I just recently rewatched on Blu-ray, because it's, again, these men who come into her life and just kind of shake up her uptight world. And so it'd be an interesting double feature. And see this, I guess if you want to see this movie for many reasons, Laura San Giacomo is really good in it. Peter Gallagher is good in it. So a good cast. Peter Gallagher naked with a plant on his penis. Yep. So there's the reason to see that. So lots
forever burned in my brain. Yeah.
Recently, I rewatched for an upcoming podcast the Psycho movies and Psycho 3, and I think I posted a still of it online of Jeff Fahey naked with a lamp covering his penis. So
equally burned in my brain.
So there's this weird theme of mid to late 80s movies where naked dudes and like things on them. Okay, so yeah. Sex Lies' videotape was definitely a fave, and I watched it a lot back in the day. I would recommend the commentary for those of you who haven't listened to it yet. It's director Steven Soderbergh, along with, oh my gosh, I forgot his name now, the playwright, who joins him in the commentary, and they have an interesting, Neil LaBute, they have an interesting banter and discussion about the film, which is really good. It's like almost like a good film school lesson.
Great.
Glad you picked it. Great film.
Yeah.
My number 7, another movie that I discovered on VHS from Atlanta. I've been meaning to mention the studios or the companies that have been releasing these films. I think Room with a View was from Cinecom, Shag was from Hemdale, and Echo Park from 1986, which was released through Atlantic Releasing, the same little company that put out Night of the Comet. And Echo Park is basically a small film about creative hopefuls in East LA and their relationships and ups and downs in their life at that time period of being in your 20s and wanting to move on to the next thing, and hopefully get noticed if you're like a creative type, like Susan Day, she's an aspiring actress. Tom Hulse, musician. Was he a musician or painter? I can't remember now. But Michael Bowen basically aspires to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. So we all have dreams and hopes, especially in certain times of our lives, and we hope to fulfill them. And this is like a very simple story of these three people who end up living with each other or next door to each other, and how their personalities and types kind of affect each other. And these are the kind of little independent films that I kind of wanted to highlight because they get lost in time or lost in the cracks. And I suspect there's not a lot of people going on about Echo Park, the movie. Not too many people. It did pretty poorly in the box office. It made less than $1 million. It made $700,000 at the box office. It was released July 25th, 1986. So it kind of came and went, or just got a very small release, more likely in New York and LA, and because it's about certain people who live in those places and just want to kind of move on to the next thing in their life. And I really like it. I mean, I really like Susan Day and Tom Hulse's relationship in this movie, and of course, Michael Bowen was the jerk boyfriend in Valley Girl.
Right.
Here playing this kind of lovable doofus who really does aspire to be Schwarzenegger and being this bulked up weightlifter type. There's a scene where he's like he has the opportunity to meet him and kind of almost like stalks him, and it's kind of funny and endearing. Excuse me.
It's funny Susan Day is in this movie. I don't think of Susan Day really as a movie actress. I think of like L.A. Law or something like that, more TV.
Yeah, I think this is on the cusp of her being in L.A. Law. I'm not sure when L.A. Law started, but it was not long after this. This is one of those movies I think came out in 86, but might have been shot in 84, 85. It was definitely felt a little bit earlier. But it's a tender romance between the two, and then Hulse's relationship with her son. She's a single mom. But then you have Cassandra Peterson and John Paragon popping up in small roles, and it's fun to see them, and just share some time, like share an hour and a half with these guys in their lives, and it's one of those hangout kind of movies that I really like, and yeah, I have it on DVD.
There's a few of your choices I wasn't able to find, and this was one of them. Unfortunately, I'm sure I would like it, and so I'm going to keep looking for it. But.
Yeah, it's definitely. I feel like it would be your kind of movie. It would appeal to your sensibilities. It's quiet. It's not an obvious choice, which is kind of what I like about it.
Yeah,
and that's why I wanted to talk about it here. All right. Moving on to our number 6s. What's yours?
Well, my number 6 is definitely not like that. My number 6 is Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, the one horror movie I put on my list. Henry was what do I want to say about this? It had a reputation that preceded it for sure. Like, this was one of those movies like Faces of Death or I Spit on Your Grave. Like, the title alone, when I was 12 or 13, it just like scared the hell out of me. And it was like a movie I was dying to see, but I was at the same time like really afraid to see it. And eventually I did. I managed to watch it on VHS, but it was hard to find for a while. It was a really small movie. It was shot on 16 millimeter, and it looks it. When you watch the movie, it definitely has a grainy, scuzzy quality to it. It's not a pretty movie to watch, but that lends to the atmosphere pretty effectively. It was also shot over 28 days. It was a quick shoot for no money, for $110,000. So it's kind of an amazing production, just that the film was even made. But what I like about this movie so much is the 80s, it was the era of the big slashers, Jason and Freddy and Leatherface. And then there's this little movie about another kind of serial killer who's not wearing a mask and he's not chopping people up with machetes. He's just this kind of normal, everyday guy. And the movie is really interested in exploring his psychology. And the movie is very psychological. It's not so interested in shocking audiences with big over-the-top kills or anything like that. And because the horror is so much more subtle, it kind of gets into your head a little bit. And it's a pretty unsettling movie to watch. In fact, you don't really see a lot of the murders. Instead, they show what takes place immediately after the murder. You see the dead body, and you can sort of imagine what happened during this murder scene, but they don't ever show it to you, which can be even more effective because, it can go any way it wants to in your head. And the actors are amazing. Michael Rooker, I think, went full method for this role. If I'm remembering right, he stayed in character. And he was married at the time with a child, which would have been pretty scary. So he kind of kept his distance from his family. He plays Henry, and he's got this friend named Otis, played by Tom Towles, and Tom Towles is equally scary. If I have one criticism of the movie, it's the actress whose name I can't think of. She plays Tom Towles' sister, Becky. Mm-hmm. I feel like this actress is maybe a little too self-aware, too not vulnerable enough to be playing the role that she's playing, which is a woman who's been severely abused. She's a survivor of child abuse. She's an incest survivor. This film goes in some pretty dark places. I mean, incest, child abuse, sexual exploitation, necrophilia. I mean, it's like it runs the whole gamut of sexual dysfunction.
Fun for the whole family.
Yeah, exactly. And when I watched it again recently, it held up. It did hold up for me because, like I said, it was so different from a lot of the other horror movies that were coming out at the time. And in some ways, I feel like this movie was looking ahead at what was to come in horror, because I feel like a lot of movies and TV shows now are really invested in exploring the mind of the killer. We want to get inside and see what makes them tick. And this is definitely a movie that attempts to do that. So yeah. What do you think about Henry?
I have two thoughts on Henry. My first thought, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is a movie that I love, and I didn't rewatch it for a reason, because it's one of those movies that it's really hard for me to rewatch this movie because it drains me physically, I feel like, and emotionally every time I watch it. So it's really hard for me to revisit it because it really is that effective. It is that. It really does that to me. It scares me. It just really does something to me that very few movies do, because I don't go into horror movies getting scared. And there are popcorn movies where I'll jump if the soundtrack is boosted up pretty loud. That sort of thing, those kinds of jump scares, but a movie like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer truly, truly terrifies me, and that there's these kinds of people out there in the world, and it exists, and you're forced to sit down with him and Tom Towles for 90 minutes and just let it unfold, and it really just kind of really does something to me, and I'm really drained. And so I rarely revisit it, but it's a testament to the power of the film that it does that. Very few movies can do that to me. And it's that powerful of a film. And McNaughton is one of those directors who kind of has a very varied career, and I don't think he's ever reached a level in his career where he could make a film that powerful and that moving or that scary, but he certainly has made some really entertaining films like Wild Things, which I absolutely love too. Yeah. And I do love a movie I do love Henry, but just in a very different way. And I respect it so much that it can do that. That's not a serial killer movie guy. I don't watch a lot of them because they kind of real life serial killing stuff really just just really just terrifies me, and just like growing up with that stuff in the 80s, like hearing about it on the news. It was all over the news growing up. These serial killers who were just like, killing women or seemed somewhat randomly, or there were some kinds of patterns, and it just hearing about that just scared me. It's much like watching, say, Adam, the TV movie when I was a kid, just really terrified me. So it's really hard for me to watch a movie about missing children just because.
Oh my god, that movie was traumatizing.
So traumatizing.
Yeah. Seriously.
And seeing this movie at a younger age, I guess it came out in '89. It had a couple of releases. When did it come out? It was in '86, and then it came out a little bit later.
Yeah.
It just traumatized me a bit because it was so scary in its way, but a really, really good and effective film. My other thought about this film is it is the best film ever written by an actor from Poltergeist 3.
Was it?
Yeah, the guy who played Dr. Seaton in Poltergeist 3 wrote this movie along with John McNaughton. And it's Dr. Seaton. So Richard Fire was the actor's name who played Dr. Seaton. He's since passed away, I believe, in 2015, sadly. But he wrote this one along with John McNaughton.
Crazy! I had no idea.
Interesting bit of trivia.
Yeah.
But highly respect this film and your choice.
Well, I don't know. There are certain films I watch. It's not a fun movie by any means. I mean, I'm not just going to turn on Henry. I'll turn on Friday the 13th, and that's fine. That could be like background noise. This is not background noise. Like, you get sucked into this movie, and honestly, when I watch it, I feel dirty. Like, after I finish, there are a few, like Last House on the Left. When I watch that, or I Spit on Your Grave, I feel dirty after I want to take a shower.
Right.
That's how effective this movie is.
When you're watching it unfold from the perspective of the people who are doing the evil, it just really just amp up that factor. Yeah. Great.
So Henry.
Yeah. My number. Oh, good. The gardeners are here, and they're.
I was wondering what is your phone. Yeah, I thought it was your phone. Okay, so the gardeners.
Through my number 6, you will hear lots of lawn mowing and stuff. Okay, my number 6 is Positive ID. Which is another one of these movies that kind of gotten pretty much lost in the cracks of time because it is a small film and maybe didn't have as much of a release. Though it was released by Universal Pictures theatrically, it was a self-financed film that was picked up by Universal Pictures and released in October 27th of 1987. I think they try to spin it as a kind of a new noirish blood simple kind of movie, and it has a bit of that noir vibe, but we talked about this off air where it was a bit of a rape revenge movie that kind of goes into unexpected places. It's not the typical rape revenge movie, I would say. It's a bit more naturalistic and more complex than you think it's going to be, really. It does pair well with Blood Simple as a movie because of the vibe. This one was... because I think they're both made in Texas. I think Blood Simple was Texas. I feel like this was either Dallas. This might have been Dallas. It feels like Dallas, at least. It was made by this filmmaker, Andy Anderson, whose first film was a comedy horror picture named Interface. But he sadly passed away a couple of years ago, which is sad because I feel like this is one of those movies where if it had gotten a good Blu-ray release with interviews by the director, who could really talk about what his motivations were with making this film, because it has such an interesting point of view to it that not a lot of films were getting in that time period. In '86, there were lots of great films in '86, but in '87, but they weren't really doing it on a scale as small as this one. I think there were films like Manhunter. There were bigger films that were just kind of exploring crime in ways that where we know pretty well, but this one was going at it from the perspective of its protagonist. A really great leading performance by this actress named Stephanie Rasco, I think, who is now Stephanie Rasco Myers. it's a kind of it's like one of those movies where it has characters and actors who look like real people and they feel like real people, but she gives such a dynamic performance that you kind of don't forget her, and I think she's really good in the film. And it has like it plays out in a kind of a slow way. It doesn't get to any kind of revenge in any quick way, so maybe even saying it's a rape revenge movie is a bit of a spoiler, but I think people who are fans of rape revenge films or revenge films in general will like it and appreciate it because it's so well done and so well made on such a limited budget. Made theatrically $371,000, so it didn't do very well.
Oh wow!
It was put out on VHS by Universal, and eventually it ended up on a DVD from Anchor Bay, which I have, and I think has been long out of print. But if you can find a copy, maybe there are made-on-demand versions of it. I'm not sure, or I'm not sure if it's available digitally. I don't think it is. I think it's worth seeking out. Positive ID, really good film. I know you had a problem tracking that one down.
Unfortunately, yeah, this is one of the three I couldn't find, and this is the one I was most looking forward to because I am a fan of revenge and rape revenge movies. And when I read the reviews for this film, there's not a single person who dislikes this movie. Everybody loves it. Mm-hmm. And I watched the trailer, and you're right. The trailer makes it. She does look like just a normal, everyday looking actress, and the trailer does give you the sense that this is a different kind of movie, that it's not exploitative. Right. And I'll keep looking. I'm dying to see it.
It has some choices that are different. And like I would say it pairs well with it's more like Ms. 45 than say Savage Streets in terms of its like the kind of a story it's trying to tell. It kind of unfolds in a more interesting way, and the motivations are different, and the character it tracks her marriage and her husband's frustrations, and then it goes into some pretty interesting and dark places, but it never really loses its characters, and you really get a sense of these people, and I really, really enjoy it and respect it. And sad, again, the director has passed away, because I really feel like this would be one of those movies that would best be benefited by a filmmaker's commentary or interview to really explore what they were thinking when they were making it, and especially since it's such a small film and self-financed film that they clearly had a huge passion. Clearly he had a huge passion for the project, and he got it out there whatever means possible. So it's great.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to get into our top fives right after this.
Me and my rhythm box. Me and my rhythm box. Me and my rhythm box. Are you jealous, folks? Are you jealous, folks? Are you jealous, folks? My rhythm box is sweet, never forgets a beat. It never eats, it never shits, it never sleeps, it only beats. It's always cool, it does its rules. It's always high, so am I. Do you wanna know why? It is pre-programmed tell you, me and my rhythm box. 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 Me and my rhythm box.
And we're back. I hope you enjoyed that. And here is the trailer for your number 6, Daniel.
In the world of the rich and famous, my is a household word. My. Oh, my. Casey Meadows, by an act of fate, is about to become my chauffeur.
She is a female.
Yes, I am.
God knows where this will lead.
You got a long way to go before you're hired.
My chauffeur.
Kiss me, stupid.
Rated R. Starts Friday at a theater near you.
I love My Chauffeur. This is one of the movies I did see when it came out. There's not a single thing about My Chauffeur that I don't love. I can go back and watch this movie 100 times. I never get sick of it. I just love it. I love Deborah Foreman. I think she's so charming in this movie. She's so sweet and kooky. I like her outfits, her cool sort of like Madonna wannabe outfits. She sort of, has this gypsy boho style. And I love the sort of basic Cinderella rags to riches story that this, that is My Chauffeur. It's not a super serious movie. It's just really, really fun. There's all this goofy stuff happening. I guess the movie does try to infuse a kind of, feminism into the movie. But, at the same time, you see, women in the back of a limousine taking their clothes off for money, which completely undermines any well-meaning feminism that Crown International might have wanted to bring to multiplexes when this movie came out. But, yeah, basically, Deborah, for anybody who hasn't seen My Chauffeur, and I don't know why you haven't, Casey Meadows is this down-on-her-luck, working-class dishwasher, basically, who gets a letter one day inviting her to come and drive limousines. And so she does, and as she's becoming this limousine driver, she has to go against this kind of established male patriarchy that's in charge of this limousine company. And she has lots of funny banter with the different limo drivers, especially like Howard Hessman, who's this total jerk. He's really crass, and he says nasty things to her all the time. And along the way, she meets Sam Jones, Flash Gordon, who never looked better. He's Mr. 80s. He has the 80s suit, the hair, the square-jawed face. And eventually there's this kind of fun chemistry that develops between the two of them. I don't have a lot that I want to say necessarily about My Chauffeur. I just want to bring it up because to me it's one of the cutest, just most fun comedies of the era. And when I watch it now, I never get tired of it. And in fact, I was thinking the last time I watched this, how varied Deborah Foreman's career actually was. Like, if you think about like Casey, the character she plays here, with the character that she plays in My Chauffeur or April Fool's Day or Waxworks, like every character she played seemed to be its own distinct thing. She did have range. And I'm sorry that her career seemed to have been kind of, it was kind of cut short, I think. I'm not sure if that was a conscious choice or maybe she just had a hard time finding roles. But yeah, it's a fun movie. So, and I know you love My Chauffeur, yes?
Yeah, you know I do. One of my all-time favorite movies. It just is pure joy for me. This movie. Every time I watch it, I have a huge smile on my face. Big smile on my face every single time. Every time I watch it, I'm like, wow, I love this movie. It just makes me happy. And it's, a throwback to 30s screwball comedies. Casey represents like the Audrey Hepburn or one of those characters. Not Audrey Hepburn. Oh my God. Definitely not Audrey Hepburn. She represents Katharine Hepburn, say, like in Bringing Up Baby, these wild and kooky characters who take these straight-laced, buttoned-up guys, in this case Sam Jones, on a wild adventure in terms of shaking them up, and I'm a huge fan of those movies. You know, they were alive in the 80s with this, and like say Something Wild, and a few others, and but they were definitely callbacks to 30s screwball comedies, which I love so much. And
Me too.
I just pure joy. Like there's so many countless scenes and set pieces in this movie that are so ingrained in my brain, and I just. I think yes. Maybe the least part of the film is when she picks up Penn and Teller, and it's like all this gratuitous nudity. It's fun for it's like a Crown International staple to have that, and it makes it adds to the charm of Crown International Pictures and why we love Crown International Pictures. But at the same time, it does kind of it's incongruous to the feminist slant of the film, which is there. It definitely is there, and they're definitely going for that. But yeah,
but at the same time, they're chasing around old ladies and like stealing her panties for 20,000 points.
As you should, really. the game that this punk glam singer that she picks up in her car plays Catfight is pretty amazing. Did you know that the actor who plays that guy is also the punk glam singer in Made to Order?
I did not.
Yeah. Dude.
Okay.
He plays Dude in Made to Order. Here he's playing Catfight. So he had quite a little bit of a career there in 86, 87 playing these characters. I was obsessed with this movie, so I tried to find out as much information as possible. Yeah, this was when we got to the 86 podcast. I think I picked this as my number one because it's one of my most watched movies, and so obsessed. So
I love the music too. I love that song Tijuana. I play Tijuana. I have Tijuana on a loop. I play it like once a week.
Nice. Yeah, the songs are memorable. Maybe because they're just played out. Whereas a lot of movies where the music is like a small clip of it, where they really play out the songs.
They do. Yeah.
And that's again a thing that Crown International did well. They really just kind of paid attention to that part of the films. They made them sound fun. They made them look fun. They were very 80s, and when they were in the 70s, they were very 70s. So they were pure fun, and we're going to get to another Crown International movie soon. So I'll move on from it, but I do love them, and I do love
There's
them.
a really sweet scene in this movie when she's out in her car, she stops in her limousine, and she stops at a hot dog stand, and this guy has ordered a car for his date, and the date is really angry that the car isn't going to come, so they have to like take the bus or something, and Casey steps in and sort of like just takes them off in this limousine and makes everybody happy, and it's just like this really romantic moment in this otherwise goofy film. That scene stands out. The other scene that stands out, of course, is Sam Jones' naked ass as he's running through the park.
Well, he's not only just like naked and running through a park. He's really drunk. He decides to take off all of his clothes in the middle of the park, and then he gets naked and he steals a baby. Yeah. He steals a baby carriage and starts wheeling it around naked, running through the park, which is, has to be seen to be believed.
But he doesn't even get arrested for like naked kidnapping.
No, because he's Sam Jones.
He's a 1%er. Yeah, and he's Sam Jones.
He's Sam Jones. He
can do whatever he wants.
Exactly.
He can come steal me away in the park if he's running around naked. I won't. I won't press charges.
Deborah Forbin, we love you, and we love your 80s movies so much. All right, my number 5, here is the VHS promo trailer for it.
Scenes from the gold mine. Everyone has a dream. Some have the talent to make it come true, but only a few have the courage to try.
We didn't give you everything you asked for. You couldn't afford to play this artist crap.
I don't ask for anything. I want to be a musician.
You think I'll set the music industry on fire?
Debbie D'Angelo has the desire and the ambition to reach the top.
You want the gig?
Yeah, of course.
You got it.
Let's hear a warm welcome for Niles, Dresden, and the Pieces.
So you wonder why I want you so bad. I wish I knew what to say.
You're going to be very happy at Rush. That's why I'd like you to sign with us now as a solo artist.
What about the band, the rest of the band?
What?
What do they get?
Nothing.
But sometimes dreams of gold can tarnish quickly.
Maybe we could share credit on your songs. I mean, I know they're your songs and all, but...
What's in it for me?
Niles, on the album, how do you want it to read? All songs by, words and music by Niles Dresden what?
You're stealing those songs right in front of my
All right,
face.
let's just chill out a second here, okay?
Jesus Christ, what do you think I am, an idiot, Niles? I want my tunes back.
I can't give you credit because they've already been published.
You can't just walk out like that.
Not on the bad, Niles. Only on you. And never try to walk over me again.
So what's left now but to pick up the
Featuring the talents of Catherine Mary Stewart, Cameron Dye, Steve Railsback, and Joe Pantoliano. Scenes from the Gold Mine, with music by Bryan Adams, Fee Waybill of the Tubes, and Timothy B. Schmidt of the Eagles. It's a love story for the 80s. From Charter Entertainment. Warehouse ship date April 27th.
Scenes from the Gold Mine was a movie. I picked that trailer because it's appropriate, because I discovered this movie on VHS. It had a bit of a small theatrical on August 8th, 1987 from Hemdale. Again, Hemdale, I think I mentioned them earlier with Shag, Little Company. But it didn't get much play. It's a music film, kind of rock music film, with Catherine Mary Stewart and Cameron Dye. Cameron Dye you would know from as the best friend in Valley Girl, Nicolas Cage's best friend, and Catherine Mary Stewart you know from Night of the Comet and many great films, Weekend at Bernie's, which I mentioned earlier. Love her, love him. He plays kind of this up-and-coming rock star that she sort of befriends, and eventually she finds herself in the band, and she plays this aspiring songwriter. And then it's like it tracks their relationship, and it gets a bit tumultuous. He has this propensity of like trying to steal her music, and so they're kind of at odds with each other. But this movie, it's all about that part of their relationship, but but it has some side stories with her and her family. Her dad's played by Alex Rocco, who was the director of this movie's father, real father. This was directed by Mark Rocco, I think, who modern audiences would more know him from the movie, directed the movie Murder in the First. That was his big Hollywood movie.
Okay.
He did Dream a Little Dream, and Where the Day Takes You. So he did some fairly stylized movies, and I feel like this one is also fairly stylized for being such a small film. But it's in an interesting way. It does feel very indie and very, but also very LA of the time. And it has people like Steve Railsback showing up, Joe Pantoliano, Jules Shepard, Pamela Springsteen's in there, and another rock person, Melissa Etheridge, shows up, and she actually wrote a key song for the film too, which is interesting. So Rocco directed music videos, so he's tied to that world, so it's probably how he got some of the players in the film, and why he chose to make a film about music to be his first film. And I like it. It's one of those movies that I was drawn to because it just it had a vibe to it that I liked, and I obsessed over Catherine Mary Stewart in films. I thought she always added a presence that was most welcome. She had a strength to her, and a leading lady that a lot of other films didn't have. And this movie, I really fully utilizes that. She has a very vulnerable side, but also a very strong side, and I like the relationships, and I like where it goes. And it has some surprising moments, but it also has some fairly stock rock movie moments and music scenes. This movie is also notable because the actors do their own singing, where a lot of these movies, the actors are often dubbed. It's usually a choice in these movies to either get real actors and dub them with real musicians, or get real musicians and have bad performances. So they have good performances, but and with maybe I wouldn't say so music. I mean, I think I like the songs a lot in the movie. They're maybe not the strongest musicians, but I still enjoy the music a lot in this film, regardless if they're strong or not. I just enjoy it. It's one of those movies, those little movies that I really enjoy. And Catherine Mary Stewart, it's one of those movies too. I think she had a couple of these in her career where she's replaced with someone else in the box of the movie. Like it's like this woman with a guitar, but it's like this hot woman, a super hot woman. Like
I always hated it when they did that.
Clearly model, yeah. It happened a lot to Deborah Foreman too.
Yeah,
I hated when they did that too. They just kind of had to sex it up a bit and make it appeal to like whoever, like some pervy guy who's renting movies at the box. And then they watch it and it's like this more intimate rock movie. And they're like, oh, there's no real sex in it, you know. So they're pretty disappointed.
I was always bothered by whoever that woman is supposed to be on the cover of the Nightmare on Elm Street, like the video box or the poster even. Mm-hmm. Like that looks nothing like Nancy to me when I see that picture. Who is this lady? Yeah, it was disorienting to always see them replace the actors with some other thing.
I was always confused. I like the artwork for the Elm Street movies a lot. I think they got better, the artworks as the movies went along, but the first one, I was like, what are they indicating that she's doing with her hand? Like that's under the cover. It's like I was a little confused by it because it's strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, VHS tapes in the 80s were very important to me. Like I rented these movies because the artwork might have sold me on some of them, and this was one of those movies that the artwork did not need to sell me because they were selling me something else. But because I knew Catherine Mary Stewart was in it, so I had to rent it, and I was surprised at this little film. And there's a side story in the film that involves her family, and actually kind of mirrors something that was going on with the real life filmmaker of this film, who sadly passed away a few years ago, and another filmmaker who sadly passed away, and way too young in this case. So, but yeah, one of those movies. Check it out if you could track it down. I think you'd like it. And
unfortunately, this is the last of the movies I wasn't able to find. But yeah, I'm sure I would love it.
Yeah, I think you'd like it. And it's not a movie that's for everyone, I would say. But if you're into rock movies and especially very 80s looking and feeling movies, yeah, this is for you.
Yeah,
and very LA too. All right, here is your number 4.
Tube socks, $3 for $5. $3 for $5. $3 for $5. Hi, I'm Spike Lee. When I'm not directing, I do this. It pays the rent, puts food on the table, butter on my whole wheat bread. Anyway, I had this new comedy coming out. It's a very funny film. She's Gotta Have It. Check this out. Nola was something special. She had this amazing effect on men.
Please, baby, please, baby, please, baby, baby, please.
Good night.
Good night. Wait a minute. Is Jamie there?
I was the best thing that ever happened to Nola, darling. Ask her, she'll tell you that herself. Why, she worshipped me.
I've never seen anybody who liked to look at themselves more than you do. Don't you ever get tired?
Never happened, baby.
Stop. Nola, stop. Stop.
Nola knew what she wanted. And she's gotta have it. Nola Darling would never marry a non-modeling, non-weightlifting, pseudo-black man like yourself.
Nolan, you done me wrong. Please, baby, please, baby, please, baby, baby, please.
No, Jamie, you're okay. I've been thinking. I'm gonna hook you up. With Nola, you get 4 days, I'll get 3.
It's mighty black of you.
But I get the weekends, though.
So you bugging out, right?
You're gonna go? You're gonna go? You're gonna go? You're gonna go? If you don't, I'll still be here on this corner. Tube socks, 3 fight hours, 3 fight hours. Tube socks, 3 fight hours. Fight out, fight out, fight out.
I love She's Gotta Have It. When I go back to watch Spike Lee films, this was probably the one that I went back to the least. But for some reason, the last 5 or 6 years, I've rediscovered it, and I like it more and more the more I watch it. I think it's a movie that still feels really young and fresh. It feels smart to me. I thought Spike Lee made a lot of really interesting choices, considering this was his first movie. I mean, it's a really amazing debut movie, similar to like Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Like, it's not the kind of movie I think you would expect from a first-time director, but it's just so artful and smart. And the thing about this movie that I think is so interesting is that, you know, when you watch it now, it's kind of crazy to think about it. But back in the 80s when this film came out, there weren't a lot of movies that featured, you know, African-American women who were urban and intelligent and educated and had their shit together and were just, you know, sort of, you know, fully well-rounded characters. And that's one of the things that I think makes the main character of this movie, Nola Darling, so watchable. From the start, Spike Lee makes it really, really clear to us, because he has her tell us that she's here to clear her name. She tells the camera directly she's here to clear her name. She's not a freak. She's not a whore. She's not a drug addict. She's not any of the kinds of stereotypes that audiences in the 80s might have made about African-American women, because that's, you know, typically how they were portrayed in movies. Although in a movie like Hollywood Shuffle, Robert Townsend, you know, sort of played with those stereotypes. Still, it was rare most of the time to see an African-American character that was so complex. And Nola is complex. She has sex, but she's never seen as like being a whore. She is aggressive, but she's not shrill. She's not a ball buster. You know, she's just like this really cool, chill woman who is charming, and she has the attention of these 3 guys who are always trying to sort of get with her. There's Jamie, who's a serious guy, Greer, who's kind of narcissistic and shallow, and then Mars, who is played by Spike Lee, who's just this goofball and totally funny. Oh, and there's actually a 4th. There's a lesbian character named Opal, which is another thing that I find so interesting about this movie. A movie about an African-American woman having a lesbian relationship, you know, and she's bisexual, and there's like no problem with any of this. It just kind of seems like the point of the film is to show how free and liberated Nola is, and even though maybe audiences would be inclined to sort of try to peg her into a stereotype. And also, by the way, all of the men who are kind of surrounding Nola, they're all trying to peg her as well. They're all trying to make her one thing or the other. She's not having any of it. She's just a free spirit, basically, who's going to live life, you know, according to the way she wants to live it. So yeah, it's a great film. It's energetic. It's jazzy. I love the way Brooklyn looked. This is pre-gentrified Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And so it has its own distinct feel. Yeah, just a great movie. There's a really nice sequence in this movie. It's Nola's birthday, and on her birthday, one of her boyfriends, Jamie, I think, kind of like takes her, like he snaps his fingers or something, or he closes her eyes, and when she opens her eyes, they're in Central Park watching this ballet, and the film goes from being black and white to being color, and it kind of feels like Wizard of Oz or, you know, something like that. The colors are really lush, and it's just a really, really cool scene. But the film was basically, again, it's another movie that was shot for nothing. I think it was shot in 2 weeks for like $175,000 or something like that. And basically became Spike Lee's calling card. I mean, it was after this that he made Do the Right Thing. And then, everything that came after. And I don't know. I think, in retrospect, I think right now the most exciting thing to me that's coming out of Hollywood are loads of movies that are centered on African American experiences, movies that are directed, written, starring African Americans. I mentioned Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk, but there was also Green Book, which I liked less. And there have been a lot of other movies recently that are telling these stories. And I feel like every single one of these movies I see, they owe a huge amount of debt and thank you to Spike Lee. I think he really got the ball rolling. So yeah, if anybody hasn't seen She's Gotta Have It, check it out. And then watch the Netflix show. The Netflix series is actually also quite good. He basically takes the same story that you get in the movie and just sort of develops other aspects to Nola's character. And I think right now season 2 has actually just been released. I haven't watched season 2 yet, but good stuff.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how the show related to the film, because I haven't seen the film in a while, but I remember it pretty well, and I wondered how the TV show affected that.
I love it. I forget the name of the actress. In some ways, she's even more charming than the actress that's in the movie. Mm-hmm. Although I can't think of her name either. But I love both of these actresses. And in fact, it's really cool. There's one episode where the movie actress actually does have a guest appearance playing another role on the TV show.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically what he's done with the TV show is he's taken the story and sort of updated it for, current times. The characters all seem much more, a lot more well-rounded, especially the men, and also Opal, the lesbian. I would definitely check it out. It's a great show.
Very few filmmakers, especially indie filmmakers of this time, had integrity like Spike Lee. I feel, and he still does a lot. He really does, because he's still interested in revisiting these characters after all these years. I mean, a lot of filmmakers would have moved on, and he's gone on to bigger films and more Oscar-y, baity kind of things, but he doesn't forget his humble beginnings. And,
no.
And he pays tribute to them. Yep.
Yeah, by the way, I don't think we should forget either that Spike Lee, he took a lot of shit back in the day. I mean, he was constantly criticizing Hollywood for whitewashing. Driving Miss Daisy won the Oscar over Do the Right Thing, which is insane. Right. I mean, who's watching Driving Miss Daisy? He made a lot of noise, and he stuck to his guns back then. And really, like I said, thank God, because I do think a lot of the movies that are coming out now, which are similar in focus, they really owe Spike Lee everything. It's crazy that he was seen as just like a sort of troublemaker or overtly political or something, which may just speak to the times. Again, it was a different era. So sadly,
right. Yeah, it's a testament to his power as a filmmaker, because he's able to overcome, I'm sure he made a lot of enemies, by being so vocal about what he believed in and what he, and the clear way that Hollywood treats people of color and filmmakers of color, especially in terms of you don't see many filmmakers making major films of color. There's been a tide and it's been turning for sure these days, but it took a long time to get to that point, and he's been very vocal about it since, for all these years, and because he's such a great filmmaker, he's been able to have a lasting career, and while doing that, which very few filmmakers have been able to do, because they have been quickly sidelined by Hollywood and not given the chances.
Yeah, it's true.
So
he's so prolific. I mean, he just made Black Klansman. He won an Oscar for that, for the screenplay, and now he's on to season 2 of She's Gotta Have It, the TV show. And it's great to see him still working, really.
Yeah, and Black Klansman, I really liked that film. I thought it was really well done. And
me too.
And very entertaining. And show you that he can make films that are thought-provoking but also entertaining at the same time. And we need more of that. So
yeah.
So I've always been a fan of this film, so I'm glad you picked it. Moving on to my number 4, here is the VHS trailer.
What happens when two neurotic, comically complicated
Are you insane?
Beverly Hills families share one mansion for a single weekend? Just another weekend of high-class struggle.
Nobody walks on Tobel. Nobody.
Frank told you what?
No one! No one! Go ahead, ruin the wig. Kill yourselves. Have fun.
Delicious fun.
Want to get your paws full of honey? Come to me. Tonight. After midnight. Let me do you right.
And shameless sexual adventures.
I'm here to give you the greatest gift.
Another scenes from movie. And this one is scenes from the class struggle in Beverly Hills. Written and directed by Paul Bartel. And this is one of those movies that lives and dies by its cast and its writing. I mean, it's not about the cinematography or the locations or anything fancy. It's real pure character driven and character comedy. And best of all, its warped sense of humor, thanks to Paul Bartel, makes it an utter delight for me every time I watch it, and I never tire of it. I came to this movie a little bit late. I would say in the late 90s, somewhere around 97. I struck up a relationship at Kim's Video with the very first member of that store. His name was Henry Gordon. He had membership numbers, and they always started with a B for Bleecker Street. And that one was B. His membership number was B1. So he was very much the first member of that store. And
that's great.
He was an older man, and we became friends. And he told me about this film, which he called his favorite movie of all time. And so I got very curious about it, and I rented it, I think, that night, and I immediately kind of fell in love with it because it was so warped and fun, and had just a sense of humor that I really liked. And I knew Eating Raoul. I had seen Eating Raoul by that point, but I wasn't seeking out every single Paul Bartel movie yet. But I quickly changed that, and I went to see, and I went to, I ended up renting all of his films and really enjoying all of his films in their different ways. Lost in the Dust, Private Parts, and a few others. Death Race 2000. They just had an interesting quality to them that a lot of other filmmakers weren't doing. I mean, there were filmmakers like, say, John Waters, who were doing satires, but Pierre Bartel was doing it on this more kind of almost near Hollywood level, even though it was a small film released by Cinecom Pictures. So he was kind of bringing it a little bit more to the mainstream, and I really dug that. And it has a great cast: Jacqueline Bisset, his pal Mary Warnoff, playing these matriarchs in a way of their families. Ray Sharkey and Robert Beltran playing the help, like chauffeurs for Jacqueline Bisset and Mary Warnoff. Filmmaker Paul Mazursky shows up as a dead husband, as a ghost. Yeah. Rebecca Schaefer, who sadly who passed away not long after this film, is the daughter. Barrett Oliver from Neverending Story is the son. Ed Begley Jr. is funny here. I think her name is Arnisha Walker. She plays Tobel. She's especially fun to watch in this movie. Yeah. She has a great role here. Edith Diaz playing Rosa the maid, who plays this crazy maid. This is basically like a high-octane soap opera telenovela type story unfolding about these crazy families and their relationships and their and especially their sex lives and how the wacky places it goes to. And I love it. I really do love it. It is one of those ones I could watch a lot. I tracked down a DVD of it. It has never been released on DVD in the U.S., but there's an Italian DVD of it in Italy that's widescreen, so I tracked it down. I now own it, It's been in my collection for a while now, and I watch it every once in a while, hoping a U.S. release will eventually make it here. But it's one of those movies again. I don't know how time hasn't been very kind. I hear people talking about other Paul Bartel films, but not often about this one as much. So, what are your thoughts on it?
I love it too, actually. I mean, I have a couple of thoughts about this. One of my favorite genres of 80s movies are movies that fetishize the rich. And that sounds disgusting to me as I hear myself say it, because I gotta tell you, if I saw a movie, like a comedy about the 1% now, I would just think it's gross. But
totally.
for some reason, it's like the Rebel Flag and Shag, you know? You just have to like accept it for what it is. It's a historical document, and overlook things that you find offensive. But there's so many movies from this era. There's this, Brewster's Millions, Wall Street, Trading Places, the TV show Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And then, by the way, there was this whole subgenre of movies that fetishize Beverly Hills wealth. Like, Troop Beverly Hills Madam, the Hollywood Wives. My Chauffeur was Bentwood. Might as well have been Beverly Hills. But, what I like about these movies are the tropes that you always see. There's always limousines and mansions. There's Brooks Brothers and like snotty, spoiled teenagers. The interior design, I love all of that.
You forgot you forgot the Godfather in Beverly Hills movies of the 80s.
Which one am I forgetting?
Down and Out in Beverly Hills.
Down and Out. Oh, well, I'm getting to Down and Out.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Down and yeah. But Down and Out. But that's what I was gonna say. So I love all those movies that just like accept wealth as being like this great thing. And by the way, that really was an '80s, value. It was almost like in the '80s, if you had a lot of money, you were considered to be a good person. I think that's how a lot of people thought. But then along the way, there were these other movies that sort of poked fun at that. This is one of them. Down and Out in Beverly Hills is another. Even Troop Beverly Hills. I mean, you realize watching these movies, having money does not make you a good person. And that's one of the takeaways from this movie. I like the way that it sort of holds the rich up as sort of, ideal models of what we should all aspire to be. But then it just as quickly, sort of destroys them. It knocks them off their pedestal, which is always fun to watch, especially in 2019. The other thing that I like about this movie, and this kind of really resonated with me the last time I watched it, was the portrayal of bisexuality between Robert Beltram and Ray Sharkey, because the bisexuality here, it's not sleazy necessarily, even though Ray Sharkey's character is kind of a sleazy character. Robert Beltram's is not. He's a really sweet guy in this movie, actually. But the bisexuality, it's not judged. It's not a joke, really. It just kind of is what it is. It's goofy. Basically, these two guys, they're playing the sex game. Whoever can seduce the mistress or whoever, the woman that they're working for, wins. I'm a little bit unclear on the rules, actually. Somehow this all leads to them like having sex together.
Of course, naturally.
Yes, yeah, as every game should. And it's all just like really playful, and in a way, I don't know, this movie came out in the late 80s. This was not the boom era for bisexual movies. That would have been in the 90s with movies like Basic Instinct and Threesome and Three of a Kind. So it's just interesting to see this rare example of bisexuality kind of being normalized in an 80s film. And yeah, I think it's kind of sweet. It's cute, actually, these two guys together. But it's a really fun movie. I love it.
I do too. It's one of those movies that just, it might not seem like an obvious choice, but it really just kind of make me happy when I watch it. And I like those kooky movies about families, but also mix it with kind of soap opera-ish elements that I like in a movie like, say, Soap Dish or Delirious with John Candy. I don't know. I could tend to watch those movies a lot for some reason.
Yeah.
So I need a triple feature of those movies. Maybe would be like a dream for me.
Well, and I guess it's also a bit of a French sex farce, with everybody going into everybody else's bedrooms, and they're all sort of having to hide the fact that they're all sleeping together. It has a little bit of that too.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely like the Americanized version of it, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And Blake Edwards was obviously doing that too in the 80s,
yeah.
but Paul Bartel's version, which again adds his kind of warped sense of humor because the character is a bit more eccentric in their own ways than, say, like you wouldn't have a Rose of the Maid character and say like a Blake Edwards movie. This is so it just it's just kind of fun. It really is fun for what it is and what it's trying to do. All right, and what is your number 3?
You wanted to know who and what I am? I'm a killer. You wanted to know where I'm from? I'm from Connecticut. Mayflower Stone. I was taught that my prince would come, and he would be a lawyer, and I would have his children. And on the weekends we would barbecue. And all the other princes and their princesses would come. And they would say, delicious, delicious. Oh, how boring. So come on, who's next? Who wants to teach me? Are you afraid? You're right. Because they're all dead. All my teachers.
Liquid Sky.
Liquid Sky. I don't know if very many people know about this movie. I've had a long obsession with Liquid Sky. It's probably one of the most atmospheric movies I've ever seen. It's definitely one of the strangest movies I've ever seen. It stars a model / performance artist named Anne Carlisle, who I don't think went on to do anything else. I'm not sure. But she plays a dual role in this movie. Her main role is this woman named Margaret, who's this kind of sexy party girl model. And at the same time, she's also playing a boy named Jimmy, who's also a sexy party boy model who happens to be addicted to drugs. And the film takes place in, once again, like Smithereens, old New York, the New York that doesn't exist, unfortunately, anymore. It's all set in like abandoned penthouses, warehouses, clubs, and which I would assume have long been destroyed or gentrified or something. And the movie is the plot of the movie is very strange. Anne Carlisle's character Margaret is basically, I don't know how to put it, I guess she's kind of possessed maybe by aliens, and they get into her body somehow. It's a kind of vague, and whenever she has sex with somebody, she releases a hormone, and the hormone goes directly to the aliens, and basically the aliens are feeding off of her every time she has sex, and so the whole movie is like her having sex with different people and feeding these aliens. But what's interesting is that she is constantly being abused by all these people that she has sex with. So she quickly discovers that when she has sex with them, that if she has an orgasm, the intensity of this molecule that she's releasing it's so intense that it will kill whoever she's having sex with. So she kind of gets her revenge that way. the look, the feel of this movie, New York to me has never looked more otherworldly. I mean, it's like this bizarre space landscape. It's drenched in neon lights. The music, it's this music that's so crazy. It's like, I think they used a Wurlitzer keyboard. But it's like bizarro circus music almost. And there are scenes of, like I said, clubs, people wearing these amazing outfits that are in day-glow neon colors, crazy hairstyles. There's a performance art scene that, it's like if you imagine, for anybody who might know Laurie Anderson or Pamela Z, that kind of like cool downtown performance art scene that existed in the 80s. You see that in this movie. And basically there's really no relatable character in this movie. The movie, it's all about surfaces and it's all about atmosphere. It's, people almost are, it's almost like people are wearing these masks. They put on so much makeup. They're wearing this like kabuki white makeup with splashes of color. And it seems like that's all they are. All they are is basically what they present to us. And there's no sort of internal person inside of those bodies. And by the way, I think that is a major theme of this film. You see lots of mirrors, lots of masks, the makeup and the costumes. And on the soundtrack, you hear people repeating like a chant, look, look, look. It seems to be a movie about how appearances sort of dominate this downtown New York milieu, and how important appearances are. But it's a swirling neon dream, and I love it. And I'm assuming you do too?
Yeah, I do love this movie.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Not the easiest movie to love, I'm going to say. The fact that we love it is because it's like, how accessible is this movie to people? I think it's going to be not very accessible to people because it's a bit odd. It's really out there. It definitely will appeal to people who like a certain aesthetic to films, like it's like a downtown New York aesthetic, like that kind of vibe. Yeah. I was thinking about our list, and like it's funny how you have many more New York movies than I do. Actually,
it's true.
My top 5 is all like LA movies, actually, which is so odd. And I have the LA movies. You're from California. I'm from New York. You have the New York movies, and this is a very New York movie, and in the way it unfolds. But it's like New York is told by a immigrant's point of view, like Slava Sukuman's from another country, right? He definitely seems like he is from somewhere else.
He is, yeah. And in fact, I think he was a teacher of Anne Carlisle's, and that's how she got hooked up with this film. And I think his wife made the costumes.
Anne Carlisle, I think, was in one of the movies that I mentioned in my honorable mentions. She was in the movie Perfect Strangers from 1984. It was a Larry Cohen film, a very downtown New York thriller in this case.
Okay.
With another actor who was in one of these movies. He was it was a really good film. Actually, I like that film. It's pretty underrated. It's definitely different for Larry Cohen. He made a couple of very New York downtown thrillers, and that was one of them. But he did them back to back too. But yeah, I like her in this. It's a very like I said, it's a challenging movie for some because it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But I think people who are interested in kind of cult films and movies that are kind of out there and the kind of stories they're trying to say. And this does mix performance art and aliens and sex in a very unique way. That's not in any other film. This Liquid Sky is very much its own movie, and I really love that about it. I like that Paula Shepherd, who was Alice in Sweet Alice, is in this film, and she has a key role in here, and she's pretty bizarre in it. And she
plays the performance artist.
Yes, which may some of her music may show up in this podcast somewhere.
Awesome, great.
Love that scene. I love that part of the movie. I love all of it, really. It's really, really well done for what it is. It's like, it's hard to even explain the film, really. And,
well, that's what I was trying to say. There's so much emphasis on looking and appearances, and I'm wondering if that's not the point of the film. Maybe the film is about the superficiality of this club culture that is explored in the movie. In fact, there's even one scene where Jimmy is like looking in a mirror and he's coming. Right, he's looking at himself having an orgasm, and then on top of that, he's surrounded by people looking at him, looking at himself. There's just a lot of emphasis in this movie placed on looking, and you never quite get beyond the surface of that. So I'm not really sure what the filmmakers are trying to say. I don't necessarily think that it's as simplistic as saying all these people are superficial and shallow. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I recommend just checking it out for the atmosphere and the crazy music. And anybody who's into fashion will definitely love this movie for sure.
I think it's more of a movie to like experience instead of just watch.
Yeah, you let it wash over you.
Exactly. You have to go in with that way. You can't just like expect a linear, traditional storytelling. You're going to get like something different with this one. And that's what I totally respect about it. That's the magic of independent films. You get all kinds of stories in different ways, and they're told in different ways too. They don't have to be traditional in any way.
No. And by the way, this movie has an excellent ending. That scene where Anne Carlisle is climbing up the side of the mountain, the side of the building, not a mountain, the building, to communicate with the UFO, which by the way is so cheap looking. It's a frisbee. It's
very cute. Yeah.
Yeah. That scene is incredible to me, and I don't know how it's shot. It's like this heat. You know what I'm saying? What is that kind of camera called? Like heat sensor motion.
Yeah, this is the Predator of indie New York downtown art films.
Killing people, where women killed you with having orgasms. It's the Predator of that movie. Right.
They should have sold it like that in the VHS box. They should have sold it as a new Predator for that
horny
year.
Club kids.
Yeah, totally. Get the same lady who was on Scenes from the Goldmine box to pose as an alien. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know why for a lot of these movies I was looking up what Roger Ebert had to say about them, and I have really mixed feelings about Roger Ebert. He hated this movie, and I'm kind of not surprised. He didn't tend to go for these kinds of films, but it also had just as many positive reviews. Although what's interesting is a lot of those reviews were written in retrospect. People looking back. Right. I'm not sure at the time it was that well received, but I love it.
Yeah, I don't enjoy reading retrospective reviews because I think movies change over time. They have different meanings. I like even if they're negative, I just kind of like reading that initial response to see what people thought of it 30 years ago.
I do
whatever
too.
It was. And then then have your own feelings about it and see how they kind of match up or don't. It's kind of interesting. I'm pretty sure my number 3, all the critics love this one. Here is the trailer for it.
She was born a tomboy, but now she's growing up.
You're a mechanic?
She's captivating, independent, sexy.
You can't be a tomboy all your life. You should be wearing lipstick, mauve eyeshadow. It's too much.
She's not like the other girls.
Do you want to go up to my apartment for a month?
She's ready for a man's world. Head on.
Tommy, there's a lot of money in this for you if your car beats his.
No, I'm not going to clobber Tommy.
You clobber me? She's getting ready for the challenge of her life. Her ambition is about to collide with romance.
Careful, tomboy. You're gonna like grease wash stuff. You might discover you're a girl after all.
She's got the courage, the talent, and the desire to prove It's not just a man's world anymore. Tomboy.
Okay, Tomboy. Tomboy.
It was a critical darling.
It was totally a critical darling. Tomboy always gets my motor running. I love a movie with a theme song. Tomboy certainly has that. I'm pretty sure I discussed this movie before the podcast. Betsy Russell is a titular character, Tomboy. She is she a tomboy, really? She likes cars. I think that's where it ends, right? She likes cars, and she could play a mean game of basketball or shoot that hoop.
She can.
Yeah, and guys will like be really excited that she could like throw a basket and then do high fives in slow motion. I love a good movie with a montage. This one has several. This has gratuitous nudity throughout. This is a Crown International special. It has not only aerobics, but it has like gratuitous shower scenes and locker room scenes and so much magic in those moments. But then it's framed in the story about this girl who, yes, grew up as a tomboy, is interested in cars, interested in a stock car driver, who's pretty bland. He's good looking, but has basically no personality. She's
Randy Starr.
Randy Starr, yes. He's this guy. She has the hots for, but also wants to prove herself to be that she could do whatever he does, and they have a rivalry / romance, which I guess was true of screwball comedies, and there's a bit of a screwball element to this. But though I wouldn't say Betsy Russell is quite as depth at the screwball comedy bits as Deborah Foreman was in My Chauffeur. But doesn't mean that this movie isn't entertaining. It's so entertaining. It goes out of its way to be entertaining. And this was an early VHS tape. This has been one of my very first VHS tapes. And I wore it out. Literally. I just wore it. I wore Tomboy out because it's just lots of goofiness and lots of pure Crown Internationalness. And I love it. I saw it in the theater, actually. It played in Times Square along with, I think it was The Last Dragon. So it was quite a fun double feature. It did pretty well at the box office. It made $14 million, which was pretty good for a little movie like this. So one of those ones that crossed over. But it was definitely meant to be it was a small... Crown International movies were definitely low budget. They were definitely small budgeted, but this was clearly made to capitalize on that market of guys who wanted to watch like pretty girls do goofy things, or in this case... the illusion of feminism, much like My Chauffeur, of a girl who can do.
Well, I was just about to say, Crown International. They really don't know how to make a strong feminist. Yeah, there's all the setup, and then they just kind of like destroy it with boobs, and I'm with you. I love this movie for all the same reasons that you just mentioned. It has one of my favorite montages. It's so exciting. So my favorite montage is the post-love making montage, where like they just have sex and then they get up and they do all this stuff. They go jogging and then they play miniature golf and they go on a water slide and then they take a nap in the park, as you do after you've just had sex. All to soft music. I think it's that song "Close to You," right?
It sounds right.
And then Randy Starr, the love interest. You're right. He's really bland, but man, this guy is so pretty. I mean, he's wearing just as much makeup as any of the female actresses. I think he's wearing shadow and mascara. And then he's dressed super preppy with like chinos and polo shirts, and his hair is perfectly feathered. And what's so funny about him is that he's supposed to be this like great race car driver, but not once do we ever see him actually drive a car. So I guess we're just supposed to take it on blind faith.
Well, there's posters of him. Like
he's in a poster. That's all you need to know. He's a great race car driver. There are so many great montages, like motorcycle racing, lots of slow motion sex. The sex scene goes on for like 30 minutes. It's so long. And you're right. Like waking at the beginning of the movie, she wakes up. the shower. She gets dressed. She gets on her motorcycle, and then she just happens to get off her motorcycle to play like basketball, I think, with some strange boys in the park.
Gratuitous basketball.
Yeah. And it's so funny. You mean, like My Chauffeur, really, it does kind of set up something like important. I mean, Tomboy. Her name's not even Tomboy. It's Thomasina Boyd, which that's not even a name. They just came up with that to like call Thomasina. It's just so they can call the movie Tomboy, I think.
The screenwriter definitely gave himself a high five when he came up with Thomasina Boyd.
Whatever. Yeah, she's like fighting sexism and classism, and then, you know, like in the very next scene, she's naked and with her Adrienne Barbeau hair, which looks so good.
Totally.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes in this movie. I love when they do elaborate commercials in movies.
Yes.
Like, and Can't Stop the Music. I love that scene where Valerie Perrine is doing the milk commercial with all those dancers and the Village People. It's brilliant. And the one in this one is just as brilliant. It's this like sexy donut commercial, and Tomboy's friend is eating this donut and she's saying, eat all of it. Try, you know, like stuffing her face, and like all the guys are stuffing their face with a donut. It's supposed to be sexy, and I don't know. I don't eat donuts. Maybe it's erotic. I don't know. But yeah, it's a fun movie for sure.
The gratuitous like commercials and music videos that were in movies like or so happened a lot in this time period. I feel like Modern Girls had a gratuitous like a music video moment, and The Stuff had had a commercial in it. There was a few of them around this time period that were one after the other. I remember like it was definitely reflecting the times for sure.
Yeah, and they all make it seem like commercials go on for like 5 minutes. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
They're these very elaborate things.
Oh, I love that they do that.
Yeah, me too.
Herb Free, the director, was definitely good at like trying to capitalize what was popular at the time. Like he did a slasher movie, he did Graduation Day, which was definitely borrowing from like what was happening in other slasher movies at the time. A bit of Fame in it with like a scene where the kids were like doing a Hot Lunch Jam kind of song. But then
there's a sexy dance number in this that reminds me of Staying Alive.
Yeah, he was definitely stealing from like whatever was popular at the time and putting it in his movie, and that's what the glorious nature of these kinds of movies. Like they were just like throwing things at the screen and whatever stuck and stuck out in my head for sure. And like the scene in the how can we forget the locker room scene with oh
my god,
yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I know. So I haven't been inside of a women's locker room. I don't know what it's really like, but apparently, you know, they just walk around naked, playing little tricks on each other and giggling. You know? I have to say, women don't act very mature in the locker room. I would expect this kind of behavior from men, but
right.
Yeah, it's something.
And then how she's how her and her dancer Christy Summers, who plays her best friend with the tan lines, and her dancer. There's talk about they're talking about him, and then he turns out to be gay, and yeah,
and apparently he can just wander into the ladies' showers naked, and this is not a problem for anybody. You know?
Totally.
Pre-Me Too. This was pre-Me Too. That was cool.
The most feminist movie ever, Tomboy. Yeah. We love it though.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I wrote in my notes. The music, the boobs, the tan lines, the feminism! ! That's all you need to know about Tomboy. Get it today on Blu-ray. I have it on Blu-ray. Looks great. All right.
Good stuff.
That's those are number 3s. Oh, here's our number 2s. Let's play yours.
Blue Velvet is a masterpiece, a visionary story of sexual awakening. David Thompson, California Magazine. It will be attacked, argued about, and cherished for years to come. David Anson, Newsweek. Brilliant and unsettling, this is the work of an all-American visionary and a master film stylist, Stephen Schiff, Vanity Fair. Blue Velvet. Rated R.
You can see blue
Well, definitely not as much fun as Tomboy, but important
in its own way.
Well,
in its own way,
in its own way. Yeah. There's no gratuity. Well, there is actually nudity. I don't know if it's gratuitous nudity, but Blue Velvet, one of my favorite movies. I already talked about how much I love David Lynch. He is the man for me, we just talked about Roger Ebert, who notoriously gave this movie a horrible review, as did many other reviewers at the time, but there were just as many people that did like it. I know that Pauline Kael loved it, even though she was confused by it. And I think that was the general consensus at the time. It was a confusing movie. There was really nothing like Blue Velvet when this came out in '86. It was its own thing, and it was hard to categorize. Now, I mean, in lists of the top movies of the 80s, this is somewhere in the top 10 or the top 5. It's recognized as being a classic, but it took a while, I think, for it to build that kind of reputation. And basically, the story goes, Lynch's previous film, Dune, was a massive failure. And he has been very vocal and honest about his disappointment with himself. He thought that when he made Dune, he sold out. And, of course, Lynch sees himself as he is a true artist, and he really wanted to sort of reconnect with his own sense of artistry and his own vision. Luckily, he had a 2-picture contract with Dino De Laurentiis, and even though Dune was a failure, De Laurentiis agreed to make this weird little movie that David Lynch wanted to make, thinking it wasn't going to be anything. And basically, the idea for Blue Velvet sprang from a childhood memory that Lynch had. He was out on the street one night with his friends, and he looked over at a house that was always dark and quiet, and it was always kind of mysterious what was going on inside this house. And when he looked over at this house, this woman came out naked and just started wandering down the street, and she looked kind of bruised and beat up. And the image kind of burned itself in his mind, and he never forgot it. And of course, you see that in Isabella Rossellini's character in this movie. It also inspired Lynch's lifelong fascination with looking behind things, looking beneath the surfaces. And in a lot of his movies, the home is seen as kind of a scary place, whether it's a Lost Highway or Twin Peaks. Weird things go on inside of people's homes, and it's a fascination he's had ever since this event where he saw this naked woman wandering down the street. So the movie is really about that. It's about the mysteries, the threats lurking behind everyday surfaces, his fascination with those things. Most obviously, you see that played out through Isabella Rossellini's character, Dorothy Valens, and her apartment. Dorothy Valens is this very mysterious woman. She's wearing a wig, so her appearance is disguised. But also, over the course of the movie, you come to realize that there are weird things going on inside of her apartment. There's these weird men coming in at all hours. And Kyle MacLachlan, who plays Jeffrey, is kind of the audience's guide into this weird world that Dorothy inhabits. Jeffrey also provides the movie with the kind of plot structure. This is basically a coming-of-age story. At the beginning of the movie, Jeffrey is this kind of sweet kid. He's really inexperienced. But as he gets sucked further and further into Dorothy's world, which is connected to this kind of vast criminal underworld, he becomes more aggressive. He becomes violent. He actually becomes sort of a sexual predator. I mean, he starts to stalk Dorothy. He goes into her apartment and, wants to have sex with her. So it's a very Lynchian coming of age story. It's not a sweet coming, it's not that kind of a coming of age story. Yeah, it's a strange world that Lynch creates in this movie. I mean, one of the things that I think he does so well is juxtaposes different time settings. In this movie, you know, you see hair, wardrobe, interiors from the 40s, from the 50s, the 80s. It's all kind of like mixed in, and it creates this weird sort of dreamy and disorienting effect on the audience. Even the characters themselves, they seem like characters from movies that would have come out in different eras. Like Isabella Rossellini's characters, she's basically a film noir femme fatale. Laura Dern is in this. She plays Sandy, who's like a Sandra D. Gidget kind of girl. And, you know, we've been talking about how much 80s movies were steeped in nostalgia. This movie definitely is. But what I think sets this movie apart from those other ones is that it doesn't celebrate the good times. You know, it's not looking back and remembering how wonderful everything used to be. Instead, Lynch kind of puts his own spin on the past. He kind of repackages it for audiences, and he shows warts and all. And in that way, I think he's kind of using the past to ask the audience, why are you so nostalgic? Things weren't really that great in the past. Things were kind of ugly, actually. And I think he's kind of pointing out to the audiences that it's a trap to think of the past as always being so great, because you forget things like what the rebel flag represented, for example. You know, and so in that way, this is a nostalgic movie, but I think it's very different from a lot of the other ones. Some of the other Lynchian elements in this movie that I love, you know, he creates further disorientation through the use of binaries. You know, he pits good against evil, darkness against light, reality against fantasy, but rather than keeping those things separate, he kind of mixes them all together. And again, it has this weird effect on you. You don't know, for example, if a character, are we supposed to read the character as good or is he bad? And in fact, there's one scene where Laura Dern asks Kyle MacLachlan, or she says to Kyle MacLachlan, I don't know if you're a detective or if you're a pervert. And he doesn't know how to answer that question, and we don't either, because he's kind of both. So yeah, it's to me, it's an endlessly watchable film, and I think incredibly influential. I think, you know, Lynch was one of those first directors to present the kind of stylized violence that we see in like Tarantino. He also explored the depravity of small town life. Of course, he did that in Twin Peaks, but he does it here. And I think that that's kind of echoed in a movie like River's Edge, which we've talked about before. And yeah, it's just a great, great film, I think. So what do you think?
I've talked about this film before, maybe a couple of times. I like the church.
Can't be talked about enough.
I like the church bells in the background.
Oh yeah, I live across the street. Yeah,
that's
they're
awesome.
tolling for David Lynch.
They should be. Yeah, David Lynch is such a worthy filmmaker to toll over. You know, as great as this film is, does it have Betsy Russell?
No, it doesn't.
So I don't like it as much. No, it really does have so much in it that I love, and my favorite David Lynch film, I would call it. It's always been my favorite David Lynch film. It just speaks to me. It really does. So you really get the sense that I like that you call it a coming of age story. I don't know if I've ever heard it called that before, which it really is in its way, and you get the sense that it's Kyle is playing basically David Lynch and his younger self and his curious self, whereas the kind of person who was attracted to the darkness in its own way and found himself floating to it, and it definitely he expresses it in his films, he expresses it in his art. It's very apparent that's he likes that side of life, and I do love this film. And I remember watching it when I was younger and liking that they pretend to be Jehovah's Witnesses. At the time, my grandmother was a Jehovah's Witness and made us be that, and so I kind of bonded with that fact, and that aspect of it, and. I don't know. I've always really liked it, and I still really like it. I still think it's a great film and a masterpiece, and I can't wait for the Blu-ray to come out, the new Blu-ray from Criterion. It just comes out this month.
Yeah, I'm super excited too.
Timing.
I do think it's I think you could read this movie in a lot of different ways, but I think a coming-of-age story, and actually in that way, it's sort of reminiscent of like Smooth Talk, which is also about another, we just talked about the darkness that Laura Dern confronts, and then she grows somehow from that darkness. I guess the same is happening here with Kyle MacLachlan's character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
we haven't even talked about, what's his name? Frank.
Oh, yeah, that
guy. Dennis Hopper, who is truly, truly frightening. And the story with that is that basically his career was wrecked because nobody wanted to work with him after, decades of drinking and drug use and stuff like that. But Lynch somehow got in touch with him or something happened, and Hopper wanted this role. He said, I am Frank. And truly he is. I mean, he embodies this crazy character and all of these weird sex games that he plays. And one of the interesting things that I think gets overlooked about Frank is that it's kind of hinted at that he may be bisexual himself. I mean, there are a couple of scenes where he talks about how Kyle MacLachlan has this cute ass.
Mm-hmm.
In one scene, he puts makeup on his face, he puts lipstick on, and then he kisses Kyle MacLachlan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the weird sex stuff going on just in that character alone. It could be its own movie.
Totally.
But yeah, and what's interesting too is I remember after this came out, he went on to make a lot of other movies where he was playing kind of similar characters, like characters who were kind of sleazy or scary. It seems like this movie set the template for the rest of his career.
It really did, yeah.
Yeah. Blue Velvet, River's Edge, movies like that.
He had an interesting year. Like, he did this, he did Hoosiers, and then he did River's Edge. They're all around the same time.
Yeah.
And he plays kind of complex and people in all three films, so it's interesting to see the return of I think, and also Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. He was also in that around the same time.
That's right.
So yeah, when he was back, he was back. I think there was talk of like how he hadn't been anything in a while, though he was in films. He just this was down that period where I think he says he claims he doesn't remember a lot of the films that happened before Blue Velvet. He there's periods of his life which he just kind of doesn't remember at all because of his lifestyle and the choices he made, obviously. But he certainly came back in a great way with Blue Velvet and these other films.
Yeah. Actually, just the other night, I watched the movie he directed. In the early 90s, he directed a movie called The Hot Spot, which I know you know. And I hadn't seen it in such a long time, but so much of that movie is indebted to David Lynch. I mean, it could be a David Lynch movie in some ways. Mm-hmm. It has similar noirish tropes, and it feels like a movie from a different era, and it has the femme fatale and the good girl. And so it was...
Yeah, that's definitely maybe one of his more underrated films. I think people will remember it, but it's pretty good. Also, for those keeping score, it's Jennifer Connelly and Virginia Madsen naked. So
yes, it's true, both of them. And also for those of you keeping score, Don Johnson. So
and Don Johnson, yes,
yeah,
you get everything you want.
You do.
All right. And Don Johnson, too, another one of those actors who was making interesting choices. Like, once in a while, like, he was doing something like that, or even a movie like Dead Bang, where he was playing a bit more complicated. He wasn't that straight and narrow, which was nice.
Yeah.
All right. That was Blue Velvet, and here is a VHS trailer for my number 2.
The Boys Next Door.
Congratulations, graduates!
It's taut, hypnotic, and chilling Playboy. Brilliantly directed by Penelope Spheris as Cosmopolitan.
Gave her 2 seconds of pain. Girls like that one have given us 18 years of pain.
The Boys Next Door, starring Maxwell Caulfield and Charlie Sheen. The Boys Next Door. Get out. Rated R.
Okay, The Boys Next Door from New World Pictures. New World Pictures, I had to represent them somewhere on this list. One of my favorite companies of the 80s releasing films. it was Roger Corman's studio, and then it was sold and became something else. And they had a good run from the mid '80s to the late '80s, and then they were gone. But I love them, and they made a huge impression. We've talked about them on this podcast before, and I might have even talked about this movie before. But I wanted to mention it here because this one represented a female filmmaker, Penelope Spheris, who previously made Suburbia, which I really liked for Roger Corman. But here makes a story about serial killers. Again, talking about potential serial killers with Maxwell Caulfield and Charlie Sheen, who play these teenagers who just take a dark turn in their lives and go down a dangerous path that I would say that Maxwell Caulfield is leading for them, who is a very complex character and dark character who's kind of uncomfortable in his life, and he lives in a basically trailer trash kind of world, and they're outcasts in their school. They're always playing practical jokes that no one finds funny, like outlining chalk on the ground of dead bodies, and they're flirting with the darkness in their teen years, and clearly it sets them on a path of destruction, and this movie traces that path. And what it does, because I mentioned this earlier with Henry, I don't usually like these kinds of films. Not that I don't like these kinds of films, I find them hard to watch. And so I don't revisit them often, but for some reason, this is one of those films that I can rewatch, even though it goes to some pretty dark places. And I think it's because of Penelope Spheris' direction. I think she adds a sensibility that wasn't really in other films of that time. Like, she comes from a punk rock world, and clearly with her decline of Western civilization films and Suburbia. And here she adds it to a bit of more conventional screenplay by Glenn Morgan and James Wong, who went on to Final Destination fame. She takes that story and makes it a bit more punk rock in its aesthetic, and you're kind of on for the wild ride and where it goes and the dark places it goes. It's also a very LA movie too. All my top 5 movies are very LA for some reason. It's thought-provoking, and it dares to make you side with the killers in a way, and you're forced to sit down with them and watch their eyes. I just think it's really expertly done, and it could have been routine, but I think there's an edge there that Penelope gives it. As a very creepy opener and voiceover, portraying these serial killers, and then our potential 2 serial killers with Maxwell Caulfield and Charlie Sheen. I think it pairs well with other LA gritty movies like Angel or Vice Squad.
Definitely.
And I don't know, I seem to really like those movies of that time period, those LA gritty movies. I seem to go back to them more often. And this is one of them. What's your take on it?
Well, yeah, it's funny. You're right. You chose all these gritty LA movies. I chose gritty New York movies. But I like that genre too. And yeah, I mean, LA never looked grittier than it does here. Basically, Hollywood Boulevard in this movie. I mean, it's just like nihilistic, those long tracking shots, or not tracking shots, but those long scenes basically where they're in the car, and from the car I guess that is a kind of tracking. They're looking out at all of the prostitutes and the freaks and the homeless people. It's just like ground zero for degradation and kind of a human cesspool basically. I think what it is, it's kind of like it's like the place where everybody goes when they've dropped out of society, which is basically what Bo and Roy do. They have no prospects in life. They're both working class kids, and what are they gonna they're gonna work in a factory for the rest of their lives? No, they just hit the road and want to see what's out there. But for me, what really is the best, where the memorable thing about this movie is that amidst all of the chaos and the violence, is a really sweet love story. I think that Roy and Bo make a really cute couple, actually. And I think, actually, reading this movie as queer is very interesting because, and I think you could read this movie as queer. I think that, you know, Roy, you could read Roy as being in love with Bo. He seems fairly obsessed with him.
Yes.
One of the reasons why he may be killing all of these people is to get them out of the way so that he could have Bo all to himself. I mean, I don't think it's not surprising to me that Roy kills a gay man, for example, who puts his hand on Bo's shoulder, and then later on he kills Patty Darbenville, who's having sex with him. You know, and then at the beginning of the movie, to add further evidence to the queering part of the movie, I think in the voiceover somebody says that a lot of serial killers mistake physical contact with violence or intimacy with violence or something like that, which seems to get played out in Maxwell Caulfield's character. You know, rather than have sex with this guy he's obsessed with, he's killing everybody around him. So that's one way to read the movie. But yeah, when you told me that you have a hard time with movies like Henry, I was actually surprised that this was on your list because you're right. It's the kind of I guess it's a serial killer movie, you know, which I guess is a kind of horror movie that goes within the minds of the characters, and it feels real, it feels psychological, it feels very intimate. You know, there's no removal from the violence that they're portraying.
Right.
Yeah, I love this movie. I think it's great. I think Penelope Spheris, I'm sad she's not making movies anymore. One of the weirdest career things I've ever seen, Hollywood career things, is when she went on to do like Wayne's World. I never would have expected it. But there was recently an interview with her, and she talked about how she was good with the choices that she made. She certainly made a lot of money. And even though Hollywood has turned its back on her, you know, she has no regrets. In fact, she's even glad to be out of the whole, you know, filmmaking business. It was her passion, but she has other passions now. So she's done okay for herself, I guess.
Yeah, good for her. For those of you who like commentaries, I would suggest listening to the commentary for The Boys Next Door. It was on the Anchor Bay DVD. Between her and Maxwell Caulfield. Maxwell Caulfield is scary in this movie, but he's really, you know, he brings a certain charm to him too, which draws you in. So it's a really interesting performance in that, and I like your read of it because I think it is there. I don't know if it was in the original screenplay. I'm not sure how much the writers were implying with it, but I feel like certainly with Maxwell Caulfield's performance, it's there. And I think Penelope Spheris might have picked up on it. And I think they might even talk about it in the commentary too a little bit.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I feel like it's there, and with what they were trying to add to the film, and I really dig that about it, and his performance. He's really good. He's underrated because, you know, he had gotten some flack, of course, for being in Grease 2. Grease 2 never going to live up to Grease 1's, you know, box office and expectations, although I know we're Grease 2 fans here, and especially certainly on this podcast, because had I had someone on this podcast who was not into Grease 2, they would not be on this podcast. No, if I had someone on this podcast who was on Grease 2, they would no longer be on this podcast.
Yeah.
So big Grease 2 fans, so I'm glad you are too.
Yes, of course.
You're welcome to come back next time. Yeah.
Great.
And I'm glad you're a fan of The Boys Next Door, because it always held a special place for me, because it just really one of those films that I strangely can go back to when I often can't go back to those kinds of to that serial kind of killer format movie as much.
Yeah.
There's another I guess Copycat. I guess it's maybe a bit of a glossier thriller. But deals with serial killers.
The one with Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah,
and,
I could watch it.
Yeah.
I could watch that one a bunch, but maybe because that doesn't quite go too deep into the point of view of the killer. It goes more from the Sigourney Weaver and Holly Hunter's point of view. So maybe that's probably why this one's a bit more watchable. But this one is one of the rare ones that I could really get into. It has some crazy hijinks in it too. The very 80s. There's a scene where someone's on the hood of the car, and it feels very like silly 80s in a way. but also dangerous too at the same time. But
yeah, that scene is crazy.
It's crazy. The stuff with the dog, and there's some wild, crazy 80s-ness, but also some really dark shit in here, and I really like it. I feel like this one's on the cusp of getting a Blu-ray release, so let's put it out there to put it over the edge. It really does deserve to be out there.
It's just a little trivia thing. I think I just read that Anthony Kiedis, the lead singer for Red Hot Chili Peppers, his dad played the gay bartender.
Oh,
I think that's his dad.
Oh, that's cool. So, did not know that. There's definitely a connection with Penelope Spheris and like music, obviously, from her.
Oh yeah,
she has a lot of that sprinkled throughout her films because she comes from that world. All right.
Yeah, and the soundtrack in this movie is really important. I mean, it's just this loud thumping metal music, and it's adrenaline pumping. It's a great soundtrack.
It's certainly a choice that I don't think it would have been if they hired someone else, like a more conventional filmmaker. Mm-hmm. I feel like it would have been a much different film if Penelope had not been in it, been a part of it. So it's a tribute to her, really. I really attribute a lot to the success of the film to her and to Maxwell and his performance.
Yeah.
All right. Down to our number ones. Here's yours.
As summer approaches, more and more movies are beginning to appear in theaters across the country.
I'm from Hollywood.
One of those movies is Baghdad Cafe, the offbeat, quirky story of a stranded West German tourist who finds a new home with a strange bunch of locals in the middle of the desert.
How about some crackers?
Crackers?
Crackers.
Magic.
One of the most original, exhilarating American comedies in ages, Judy Stone, San Francisco Chronicle. It's almost more joyful and inventive than anything around. David Sterrett, The Christian Science Monitor. Magic. That's what Baghdad Cafe is. Kevin Thomas, Los Angeles Times.
I don't know if I want to go out on a limb and say that this is my favorite movie, but I think it might be my all-time favorite movie. I'm not sure. I love Baghdad Cafe. It's a movie that is really personal to me. I love the characters. I love just the general message of the film, which is basically, if you're unhappy with your life, then do something. Get up and do something with your life. Be happy. You can make a choice. You can either make a choice to embrace all of the things in your life that are bringing you down, making you feel depressed or lonely or whatever, or, you can stop suffering and you can get up and try and, create a life worth living. You only get one life. You might as well do something with it. And the thing about it, I know I'm hearing myself say this, and I think it sounds really cheesy, especially in 2019. But this is not a cheesy movie. I mean, it's very sincere and very heartfelt, and it's not pandering. In fact, it's almost like a grown-up fairy tale. I mean, Baghdad Cafe, the setting Baghdad Cafe, it becomes a kind of transformative place. It's almost like anybody that steps in this cafe, they go in unhappy and they leave and they've got a better life. And you see that most particularly with the two main women characters in the movie, Brenda and Jasmine. Brenda is played by CCH Pounder and Jasmine is played by the German actress Marianne Sage Brecht. And they both have different miseries in their life. Brenda is running the Baghdad Cafe, which isn't doing well financially. She has this boyfriend who she's nagging, and he kind of like runs off and leaves her. Then she's got these two kids who don't really respect her. And she's just kind of like, she's one of those people who's just kind of like given up. And one day into Baghdad Cafe comes Jasmine, who has her own problems. Jasmine is a German tourist who has just left her kind of boorish asshole husband in the or in the desert. And she's also really sad. And over the course of the movie, both of these women have to overcome their anger and their sadness and also their distrust for one another and distrust for other people and create a friendship. And actually kind of create sort of a surrogate family. It's really wonderful to watch. I find it really inspiring. There's a great scene. One of the happiest scenes in any movie is the cabaret scene in this film, where both of the women, they get together and they do this little song and dance number, and everybody, all of the truck drivers, everybody from the surrounding area comes to watch them, and it goes on for like 5 minutes. They're singing and dancing and magic, and everybody is like super happy. But again, it never feels to me like it's cheap. I mean, it feels just like it's just really fun, and it's meant to make you feel good. And yeah, I think that's the ultimate message of this film. You know, just, you know, you can choose to have a fun life, or you can choose to have one that's not very fun. The supporting actors in this movie are great, especially Jack Palance, who plays this this kind of like hippie dropout who lives in a trailer outside of the Baghdad Cafe. He develops this romance with Jasmine, which is really sweet. He paints her, and over a period of time, he gets her to remove articles of clothing. So he ends up painting her nude. Yeah, it's just really fun. So yeah, I love Baghdad Cafe. The other reason why it's special to me is that when I moved to San Francisco, once upon a time in the Castro, in the gay neighborhood, there was a place called the Baghdad Cafe, and it was the first place I ever went for like a meal. And they used to have the poster for the movie hanging above the cash register, and it's no longer there, sadly. It's been replaced with something else, but that was a really great place. It was where like you went with all of your friends and you hung out, and they did try to create San Francisco had its own sort of little Baghdad Cafe. So yeah, what do you think about this movie?
Oh, I love this movie. It's one of those movies that kind of catches you by surprise. Like, it's very unique in its the way it's shot and the way it's and so you're kind of like drawn into it, like, oh, like what is going on here? Like the angles are very different, and the way the story unfolds is a little bit different than stuff that was coming out at the time. So I watch it, and every time I watch it, I'm like, I know what's going to happen, I know where it's going, but I kind of forget at the same time. So I'm just kind of really into it. I'm like all in when I watch it, and I just love the characters and you know, how they kind of touch each other and how people can affect each other. It's really about that, right? And the changes in our lives that you said we can make, and if we will them to, and I like how this Baghdad Cafe is the physical representation of like a place that can where you go to that can transform you into your next stop in life, and it has some great moments, really great standout moments, in the leading performance by Marion Sagebruck. Yeah, she's really good and really unique and interesting to watch too.
Yeah, she's so cute. Actually, I think she's kind of sexy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. She is. She's really sexy.
Yeah, like in this kind of Botticelli way. She's she's cute. You know, I think another thing about this movie, I think why this movie is even more necessary now, I'm a little bit disconnected now from U.S. news, but it seems like every time I turn on CNN or something, there's talk about like Donald Trump and the wall and keeping out foreigners, and it's fucking ridiculous. And one of the things I like about this movie is that Brenda has to overcome her suspicions of Jasmine, who's German. There's a scene where she's going through Jasmine's stuff and she gets freaked out and sees that she's got like lederhosen, and she's never seen lederhosen. So she thinks this German woman is a freak. She calls the cops, and the cop, who's played by a Native American, is like saying, just calm down. And I feel like one of the really strong takeaways from this movie is that this is the United States. The U.S. is a place for everybody, and you need to get over your suspicions and your doubts about other people. I mean, that's just what the country is made up of. It's made up of foreigners. So I think, in Illinois or Kentucky or wherever it is that they're voting for Trump, let's show this movie every single night on TV until people realize that that wall is absurd.
Thank you.
That's my polemic. Sorry to get all political. But
we certainly do need more Baghdad Cafe in our life. Have you ever been to the real Baghdad Cafe, the location?
No, I wish. Just the one in the Castro, but not the actual one. No.
That was when we moved from California back to here where we are now, New Jersey. Our first stop was at the Baghdad Cafe to check out the location, and I really,
you're so lucky.
I really like seeing it, and it's even more like quirky now.
I bet.
Looking on the inside, it's very ornate and lots of things all over the place, and so it was fun seeing it, and then of course I had to watch the movie after we got back to to fully realize the location, and it was fun. It was fun seeing it, and then revisiting the movie too, especially.
In my home, I don't have like a lot of film stuff, but I front and center in my living room, I have the poster, and I am so happy to see the Baghdad Cafe poster every morning, every night. I'm always looking at Baghdad Cafe. I just love this movie.
Do you have the Grease 2 connection to Baghdad Cafe? Because I always like to make Grease. I always like to make Grease 2 connections to everything.
No, what's the connection?
Okay, the director of Baghdad Cafe was Percy Adlon, who ended up was the dad of Felix Adlon, who married Pamela Segal.
Wow!
And then she adapted. And then she kept his name, and even though they got divorced, so she's now Pamela Adlon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So there you go. So
yeah, I'm not much Grease 2 trivia, but
there's a connection, guys. All right, and here is my number 1.
Love can sure spin your head around. God, where do you begin?
Well, hello.
We must have been meant to be together. It's too bad you have to work tonight.
Only till midnight.
Fate is a funny thing.
Take a nap, because you're going to need all your energy tonight.
It was one of those strange nights.
Finally meet the right girl and you blow it.
That could ruin your whole day. In a big way.
Dad, it's happening. This is it. This is really it. This is the big one.
This is a joke, right?
It's really happening.
This can't be true. We'll all be dead if we don't get out of here. Nobody believes this, do they?
Not me. Not Spongy. Make a list for me. People who we want to bring along.
We gotta get Julie. Who's Julie? Harry Belafonte. Who are you? Who are you? Stop and let me off. I don't stop for nothing. Jump! Don't hurt me, man. I got Nakamichi Pioneer. I got everything. If it doesn't happen, I'll pay you. If what doesn't happen, man? I'm dreaming. That's it. I'm dreaming. Y'all ready to go? You the pilot? Hey! You know anybody can fly a helicopter? Helicopter pilot.
All the helicopter pilot bars are closed. What's the problem?
It's true.
Love can be exciting.
Trust me with this.
Even terrifying.
Julie! I love you.
But nothing could prepare you for an experience like this.
What is the truth, Harry?
Miracle Mile.
Listen, I'm just a guy who picked up the phone.
Another one from Hemdale, Miracle Mile. This is the one I totally left off my list. I didn't even think of it until like last minute. For some reason, I don't know why. I kind of forgot that Miracle Mile was an 80s movie, and that I loved it so much that I had to put it on my list. And here it is. It's not my. It's even though it came out in '89. It's not my favorite movie in 1989. It's my second favorite movie in 1989. My first favorite movie in 1989 is Heathers. So we're covering both Heathers and Miracle Mile, which is great. Steve Jarnett, the director. This is the kind of independent movie that shows you how much you could do on a small budget. Like, you could really mount like a really big film that has a bigger scope on a really small budget. I mean, not every indie film. I love all kinds of indie films. Not all of them need to be people sitting in rooms talking, or in horror films, people sitting in rooms talking while being tied to a chair bleeding. You can make a movie on a relatively low budget that could essentially be about the end of the world. And that's what Miracle Mile aspires to do. And on a $3 million budget, it does that. And Anthony Edwards and Mare Winningham played the leads, with lots of great oddball supporting roles, like all the characters that are in the diner, like Kurt Fuller, Denise Crosby, Olan Jones, and others are add a unique quality, and they bring their own unique, quirky sensibilities to the film, and makes you really dig it, because Anthony Edwards is basically playing the straight man. He plays this guy who answers a phone call. He intercepts a phone call at a phone booth. Remember those phone booths? Very 80s thing. If there ever was one. And he essentially learns that there's a military strike, a missile strike, and a possible missile heading their way, and where they are in LA. So yes, the nuclear crisis of the 80s, the arms race, was something that we lived through growing up and scared us. I know it scared me completely, and like it could happen at any moment. There's still that fear, of course, these days, but we definitely it was a big part of growing up in the 80s, was that impending doom of nuclear Holocaust, and this movie played upon those fears big time for me, so it left a huge impression. And where it goes by the end of the film really left an impression as well, because of that I had to include it here, because it was such an affecting film on me, and it still continues to do that. It's on Blu-ray now, and from Kino Lorber Studio Classics. It has a great special edition with commentary and interviews and all that stuff, and it's a really good film, and I've always loved it. It has a great Tangerine Dream music in it, the cinematography by Theo Van de Sande, who also shot like Crossing Delancey, and funny enough, Wayne's World, which I also really like. And he also did movies like Body Parts and Cruel Intentions, and The Great Exit to Eden. All kinds of movies.
Oh, yes. Yes.
All kinds of movies. But it looks really good here. What you could do, again, on a small budget is kind of amazing when you have people who really want to tell a story and will go out of their way to have that story made and put their heart and soul into it. And that's what I got with this movie. And it's only crime. It's only real flaw.
Oh, yeah. Tell us.
is the poor choice of Mare Winningham's hair in this film.
Oh man, who thought Mare Winningham should look like Ziggy Stardust?
I don't understand it. I don't know why. Who cut her hair? Who did that to her hair? But
I don't get that hair.
It's there.
Well, I have several thoughts about this movie. I mean, one, I remember very vividly when they were showing commercials for this movie, I was confused. I didn't understand what this movie was supposed to be. I mean, it had Mare Winningham and Anthony Edwards, who I knew from like St. Elmo's Fire and Revenge of the Nerds, Mm-hmm. And so I guess I thought it was going to be kind of like a teen thing or something. I wasn't sure. But then, you know, there was all of this like scary Armageddon stuff in the commercial. I'm like, what is this? On top of that, by the time this movie had come out in 89, the arms race was basically done. I mean, that sort of like panic that we all had that we were going to blow ourselves up, that was already over. So I was like, why is this movie coming out now? You know, it seems like this should have come out before. And I remember several years ago, I read that actually the director did try to get this film made in, you know, the early mid 80s. He had a lot of problems getting it financed. And so, you know, it wasn't until 89. And then before you know it, the arms race was over and he still had this great movie about the arms race. So whatever. But at least we didn't all blow ourselves up in 89. But yeah, so the movie, the way it was publicized, I remember being very confused by it, and also the timing of the movie. I'm a huge defender of this movie now, though. I absolutely love it. I think it's so scary and weird. It has this totally bizarre tonal shift. I mean, really, halfway from, I mean, it starts off as like a romantic, cute meet-up comedy between Mare Winningham and Anthony Edwards, and then about halfway through, Anthony Edwards gets this bizarre phone call saying, you know, it's happening. It's this weird disembodied voice on that public payphone. And then the movie goes crazy. And then it ultimately goes to this really dark place that I've never been able to forget. That final scene with the two of them sort of sinking underwater. It's so truly terrifying. But the movie, you're right. What you can do with a little bit of money, I mean, it's amazing, this film. It's really dreamy. The thing, when I rewatched it for the podcast, one of the things I kept noticing are people waking up and going to sleep. Like, you see this all the time. And I think that plays into the dreamy quality of the film. Are things really happening? Are they not? Did that phone call really take place? Or is Anthony Edwards, you know, paranoid and out of his head? And then there are all of these, like, the music, the Tangerine Dream music, the night driving scenes through downtown LA, which, by the way, I've done many, many times. And I think this film captures really well what it's like to drive around those empty streets. There are weird details. There's a scene where Anthony Edwards flicks a cigarette out of his window, and a bird catches the cigarette and it's lit. And the bird flies off with it and then starts a fire. I mean, it doesn't seem logical, but that's in the movie. There's another scene where Anthony Edwards pulls his car up into like a tree and rats start to fall out of the tree. Yeah. So it's almost surreal, like what you see in the film. But yeah, I think it captures paranoia really well. And yeah, like you said, even if it was kind of late to the game, those 80s fears that, you know, America had, we were all going to destroy ourselves. Mare Winningham's haircut is atrocious. Actually, this movie has a hysterical scene where she's sleeping, and then she wakes up in a shopping cart that Anthony Edwards is like pushing her off to safety, and she's like, "What's going on?" And he won't tell her throughout the whole movie. Yeah, and you know, talk about a crazy first date. If I were, you know,
oh yeah,
if I woke up and somebody's pushing me down the park in a shopping cart, I'd probably end that date. But she stays with them.
It's kind of amazing how it just spans over that short period of time. It plays out in real time, this movie, for the most part, which is crazy.
It does. Hey, you know, that's weird. The timing is weird, but also, like, spatially, how the film progresses. Like, he's at that diner, and then apparently, like, right around the corner, there's, like, a gym, and then, you know, around the corner from that, there's, like, a natural history museum. Like, you don't get the set, like, it doesn't seem like a real place. And in real life, that's not how LA is.
Yeah, LA is not very walkable, no.
No. But the film, I guess because of that condensed setting, it sort of, it alters the reality a bit, so it sort of throws you off watching it.
For sure. I think I've heard this movie talked about as like a feature Twilight Zone. And I can kind of see that for sure. There's definitely that element to it. And I like that you pointed out that how like the bird scene and how things affect. It's like also like how his picking up that phone call kind of like affected things. Like it sets off a chain, and this movie is very much about like how things can affect how a chain can be easily set off by one person or one thing, and
right,
and if it can really be that, the movie plays with that for sure. Like that, it could be in his head, it could be a dream, it could just be like. It could be something that's not real, but it goes to a place at the end where may or may not be a definitive answer, but you'd have to watch it to find out. But it just
I don't want to give away the ending. Yeah.
It's so good, it's just so good. It really does. It doesn't compromise for sure. There's an alternate ending on the Blu-ray, but it only adds to the question in an interesting way. It doesn't take away from the film at all. Really,
I think Anthony Edwards was perfectly cast in this because he's so relatable. He's just this kind of everyman, and he's trying to hold it together. And I read that apparently Nick Cage was supposed to play that role, and I'm so glad that they didn't go in that direction because I could just imagine Nick Cage making it totally over the top, being very Nick Cagey about all of this. But Anthony Edwards, he's so buttoned down, he's just sort of a normal guy who's been thrust into this really desperate nightmare, which I think makes the movie even more watchable.
Yeah, for sure. Just that. Can we get CGI to like change her hair? I mean, then it would.
I know.
I feel like this is like the poor Mare Winningham in the 80s. Like, not only did she get that hideous wardrobe in St. Elmo's Fire, they're like, no, that wasn't enough. Now we have to ruin her hair.
What were they thinking? Well, actually, didn't Ali Sheedy at some point have a similar haircut?
Did she? Yeah, she did kind of. She kind of had a little bit of a mullet in the late 80s. Somewhere around there.
Yeah, I thought maybe they were trying to copy that, which I guess would have been fine. I guess, then they had to make it red.
Yeah, maybe Ali Sheedy can get away with that. Mare Winningham, no, sorry,
no. I saw her actually. I saw her perform. She had a CD out in the late 90s. She lived in Marin, so she was performing in San Francisco, and she looked great. She had just come off of her Oscar nomination for Georgia, and was like joking about the fact that she lost. But yeah, she was really cool.
I love Georgia. She's really good in that, but Jennifer Jason Leigh, man, what a performance.
I know. It's amazing. I need to see Georgia again, actually. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I revisited it a couple years ago, and just loved it. It's so good.
Yeah.
All these 80s independent films, really, they have so many different kinds of feelings and moods, and they go to different places, and that's what's so great about them, and I love talking about them, so thank you.
Yeah, me too. I just want to ask you something. I mean, what do you think about the state of independent filmmaking now?
Yeah, I think I wanted to touch upon that a little bit. I think I wanted to say, what is independent film nowadays, right? Like, what are they making? I feel like, are they making independent films as much, or are they often just like Hollywood vanity projects where actors want to make a role, do something, and or they want to showcase their performances by making smaller films? I don't know. What are they?
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, Searchlight, that's Fox Searchlight, so that's not really a small little thing. I don't know. I mean, I guess, I have seen some. I mean, speaking of Laura Dern, I mean, she was in Certain Women. She's been in a lot, 99 Homes. There have been a slew of them that I think have been really good, but and at least in my experience, they're really hard to find. But when I do find them, I end up liking. I mean, I just saw 99 Homes the other night, and it's devastating, this movie.
Right.
Yeah, they're out there. They're just really tricky. They're not so easy to find.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing. Maybe because there isn't the video store anymore, it's harder to track these things down. They get lost in the shuffle of streaming services, and it's just harder to pinpoint them and or just to even identify them as indie anymore. A lot of the thing in the 90s where all these studios were suddenly having indie divisions. Like what does that even mean? Really? when you still have studio money behind it, it's like it's not really an independent film if it's if it's not independent of a studio. But every once in a while I do. Yeah, there is an interesting film. There is a Mary Kay Place film called Diane that I want to watch, an indie film. So it's on my radar, and I'm going to track it down. I think it just came out on streaming, so I might have to watch it.
Yeah, I want to see that too. Yeah.
So every once in a while there will be one or two that I want to see, and may surprise me or not. But for the most part, this the 80s and the 90s were that was the time.
Yeah,
for these films, and I'm glad we can talk about them.
Me too. I loved all of these movies we talked about. I didn't see 3 of them, but I loved all. It was so great to talk about these movies. Yeah. And I hope people go check them out if you haven't seen them. They're all so good.
Yeah, there's something for everyone. There's slipping into darkness. You get the weird weirdness with that.
Yeah.
You get boobs. You get Frank Booth. You get performance art like a Sky. You get
something for the whole family.
Yes, exactly. You get the Confederacy.
Yeah, little rebel flag for you.
Yep. And basketball exploitation. So there you go. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us on these indie films. I'm sure we can come up with something fun for next time as well, and look out for that. And I'll be looking forward to it because I always enjoy recording with you, Daniel.
Thanks. Same here. Yeah, it was really fun. Always.
Of course, you can always reach out to us on Facebook and Instagram. Cinema de Meep is on Facebook and Instagram. Retro Movie Love is a Facebook page. Twitter, same thing. Retro Movie Love and Cinema de Meep. You can contribute to our Patreon. There's patreon.com/Retro Movie Love for as little as $1. You can get an extra bonus episode every month and early access to these episodes. I appreciate you guys for that. If you could do that, rate and review us on iTunes, all that fun stuff. It's much appreciated. If you like the show, please do those things and reach out to us. And I'm so looking forward to your new adventures, Professor. Mr. Archer?
Thank you. You and me, Mr. Archer. You and me both. Hey, bring me back to do a podcast on like teachers in movies.
I think it's a must for our next one, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, I want to do that one. But
that'll be fun. Teacher. All right, talk soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Ciao for now.
What you like